Thought we would try a new clock this time, not our usual 30-second clock, but we thought we'd try something a little different this time around and hope that y'all enjoyed it. By the way, here in Durham, North Carolina, it's feeling more like summer than fall because I actually just stepped outside earlier to get a bite to eat, and definitely it felt like it was around 70 degrees or something like that. And it definitely felt like fall like weather. I know I was talking to a young lady and she was agreeing with me that it was definitely feeling more summer like than fall like. And I think I may have said that backwards earlier, but definitely it's feeling lovely here. And who knows? And maybe it'll stay this way all the way through the next couple of weeks because we do know that in about 2 weeks, actually 2 weeks from tomorrow, it'll be Thanksgiving. So we'll see if this weather holds up or not. But we know the chances of that are not all that great because definitely the weather is bound to get cold or at least cooler at some point or another. But definitely that's what's going on right now. And of course, it was really good getting outside, enjoying that weather. And of course, I've been seeing some of my neighbors walk their dogs. And of course, I've seen some of the cats in the windowsills. I don't know that I've seen anybody walking their cat, even though I do remember a friend of mine that tried to do that with their cat. Not too much luck. And I tried it with a pet cat that I had one time. And the cat was not really having that. The cat was basically rolling over, looking at me like, this is not happening. I am not trying to go out on a walk. That is for the dogs and not for me. But I do know some folks that have had better luck with that whole idea of taking a cat for a catwalk. And I don't mean the kind that models do and all of that. But, different people, different attitudes about their pets and all of that. So just thought I'd bring that little light note to the whole story of what's going on in the world and all of that. And by the way, it does look like Moderna and the federal government's biomedical research agency are entangled in a dispute over who exactly invented a crucial component of the company's coronavirus vaccine. So the simmering conflict came to a boil in July when Moderna filed a patent that excluded three government scientists who helped develop the shot. The conflict is about more than the scientific accolades or ego, according to an article in the New York Times, since the outcome will likely shape vaccine distribution and the dispersal of billions of dollars in a profit. So, anytime that you got inventions and things along those lines, people are going to claim that they did it or that somebody else did it as well. So that's just one of the things that happens whenever these things take place. And it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out and what folks have to say about that as well. As a matter of fact, Ken Hammer, who is a person affiliated with the PayLessForCollege.com, says the federal government should insist that it be on the patient's application as a developer of the vaccine. And it was also arguing that the federal government should sue Moderna to enforce its rights. And they were even arguing that big pharmaceutical companies have been allowed to quote unquote steal scientific research without paying for it. And they've been allowed to patent or allowed to patients these drugs without giving the federal government the correct share of the profits based on the government paid for research. And I do know that even here in the Carolinas, which is a home of a lot of pharmaceutical companies, that is a big thought about how much the pharmaceutical companies or big farm are being impacted by what's going on with the pandemic and by some of the profits that they are making off of this vaccine, as well as off of a number of other things going on in that regard. So that's one of the stories that I found. I'm going to bring up a couple of more stories, and then I've got a guest in who's going to share a little bit about what's going on in his neck of the woods, which I believe is California. But we're going to find out more about that in just a matter of a minute or two. By the way, it does look like inflation is about to hit a three-decade high. As a matter of fact, they say that U.S. inflation hit a three-decade high in October, fueled by strong consumer demand and a shortage of goods amid a snarled supply chain. As a matter of fact, I was just out that when I went on that walk, ran into a driver for UPS. He said that he would not get home till around 8 o'clock, and he lives in a town nearby called Mebane. But I did tell him that I'd heard that there was a shortage of truck drivers in certain industries. I'm not sure if UPS is one of them or not, but we did have a brief conversation, and he was saying that he's definitely looking forward to some long hours, and he's got a newborn. So I'm sure that he's trying to make as much money as possible in order to take care of that newborn and all of that. But they did say that the consumer price index shot to 6.2% from a year earlier, the biggest increase since 1990. So that is a long time ago. That is over 30 years ago, and all of that, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Meanwhile, the price of gas, according to the Wall Street Journal, rose almost 50% from the same month a year ago. And adding to the acceleration in price increases last month was a 4.8% bump in energy prices. So I do know a lot of that is going on, and a lot of people are paying attention to these numbers as well. As a matter of fact, the federal government released the consumer price index figure for October earlier this morning being Wednesday. And while experts had been predicting a 1 month CPI jump of 6%, the actual increase was 50% higher. And a 9% monthly increase suggests a annualized inflation rate of 10.8%. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. And as one person was saying, your employees expect increases in real wages year over year, and they're wondering if people have factored in inflation when they're looking at what to pay people. So that is a very good question that I'm sure a lot of people will be paying attention to and all of that. So it'll be interesting to see how these things play out and what goes on in that regards. And on that same financial tip, almost a quarter of financial service firms in New York City planned to downsize within 5 years, compared to 13% of companies overall. So that's a whole lot of companies involved in the finance world and all of that. A survey last month by the Partnership for New York City also showed a third of employers expect their needs for office space to decrease, and a slower than expected return of workers to their offices has crimped businesses that serve them, especially on Wall Street and other neighborhoods where many of the city's tallest buildings are located. The survey found that out of the city's 1 million office workers, 28% had returned to their offices as of October, up from 23% in August. And the rate last month compares with forecasts for 41% in August, before the Delta variant definitely scuppered or stopped some of those return to the office kind of plans along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm hearing a lot of people talking about a hybrid world and us moving into a more hybrid kind of existence. But I'm interested to bring in Jay Jones. I think I've got another person that might be joining us as well. They were here earlier and everything, but Jay is here, and definitely interested to see what's going on in Jay's world. So, how are you dealing with this pandemic? How is life treating you? Tell folks a little bit about yourself and what you've got going on. And of course, we would love to hear your stories about what's happening in your world, because we love sharing. And of course, I've met some tremendous people off of Clubhouse and off of various podcast guest research as well. But I'm sure that our audience, which is a global audience, would love to learn more about Jay Jones and what Jay Jones is all about. I know one of the things I can tell them is that I had the pleasure of meeting you doing the blackowned.com event, and that was truly a wonderful event, and saw that you were involved in a lot of things and have a lot of experience in both the Hollywood world with television and a number of other things in that regard. So definitely, it's great to see you. And I've got a good friend of mine that lives out in Los Angeles, and that is the director Ronnie Warner, who did the film This Christmas. So I know that y'all might even know each other, or maybe have traveled in some of the same circles. But I've known Ronnie, whose family isn't that far from me. I live in Durham, North Carolina, and he's from Hillsborough, which is a town not that far from here. And actually had the pleasure of having a visit with him. I think it was about a month ago when he came back to visit his family and to see how they're doing. And he wants to bring some of the film industry back here to North Carolina, as he has spent probably a couple of decades now there in the California area. But I'm sure folks will be curious to know about your involvement with Black Owned. Like I said, they made me the live stream producer, and I thoroughly enjoyed that experience this past Friday. But I'm sure folks will be interested to know how you got involved with them, and also just your work in general in the entertainment field.
Hey man, that's a loaded question. Happy Wednesday, day before Veterans Day, and from
Yes.
what I found out today, talking to one of my media friends, it's also the birthday of the U.S. Marines,
Oh,
246 years old. First of all, I'm out and about right now. I'm in the Poconos, as we
okay.
say here in PA, the Poca. Yes. Um, I've been a very long time executive television producer, and then I went into programming as a vice president. And then in 2011, I've broke out, took the leap of faith, as they say, leaped, and started my own firm called Always On PR, which I'm the president of. And I've been doing that for uh, 10 years now. So I've been in media for decades, and I'm in the business of putting people on television or putting people in the media or finding newsmakers or change makers or trailblazers to just break into the mold. And so that's part one, probably, of your question. Part two is how did I become involved with Black owned? Is that I met Quentin during my early days as a producer in San Diego when I was EP, the Fox 5 affiliate there, who I keep in touch with regularly. That's the thing about the biz. Show biz, media biz, digital biz, your biz. I mean, any business. You can't burn bridges. I mean,
Right.
you heard it from your parents, you heard it from their parents, and you heard it from their parents and parents, and you're gonna probably pass it on to your children, siblings, your people, your dog. You can't burn bridges. So I've kept my relationships, and I've met Quentin there, who's the president, and I met Donna Dean through him, who is the CEO, or vice versa. And they said they needed someone in the entertainment field, or one of many people in the entertainment world who can help uh, lead them or give them some advice or get them on air. I just take it simply, get them on air, and which I've done on several occasions, and it's a great opportunity. It's a fantastic organization, and we met the other day. You connect, we click. There's chemistry, there's laughter, there's jokes, there's
Yeah.
commonalities, there's morals, there's transparency, and there's a similar goal we all have in mind, which, in brief terms, make it happen, or rise above the top, or, as Obama says, when they go high, we go higher. But as
Correct.
a crew and a team, we seem to have struck a chord on skills that we all have, and we're able to help each other and get that energy rolling and make something happen. So when you called me, of course, I was super delighted to join you and get involved in what's happening here. As far in which you have a dynamite show, I heard your intro, I heard your pod. I didn't even know where you were, to tell you the truth. I
Right.
thought you were out west, but it seems like you're in North Kakalaka, if I may say so, with a little bit of slang in it. My
Perfectly
family's
allowed.
from South Kakalaka, they're from Columbia, so I think North Kakalaka is a little prettier though, a little more beachy, a little better weather, a little, I think, I'm not sure.
No, I think we got better weather, and definitely some of people would argue that we might have some better politics, even though we've been one of those swing states, and South Carolina's got Nikki, but we did have Jesse back in the day, Jesse Helms, but we also had Jesse Jackson, who came from A&T in terms of his college
Ah,
background and all of that. So we've had some mixed things. I'm here in Durham, and Durham is definitely considered one of the more progressive parts of the state, and definitely the state itself is considered a swing state. I mean, we've had both Democratic and Republican governors. It seems like it goes back and forth. Our last governor was a Republican. Our current governor is a Democrat. I won't be surprised if the next one is a Republican, because it seems to go back and forth in that regards, and even somewhat in the way that we vote for our presidents over the last several years. So we're definitely a swing state, and a lot of that has to do with how not so much the designated, like maybe more liberal parts of the state will vote, because they're pretty much going to go Democratic, like around Durham and definitely around Chapel Hill and some of the other places. And there's some diehard conservative places as well. But like in many of the states, it's that middle part, and that part that kind of swings one way or the other that determines which way the state goes politically. Jay, I did have a question for you based on your background and everything, and I was really fascinated. There is a gentleman in the world of talk entertainment that you worked with and everything, and I'm not going to lie, I was a fan of both Oprah and Dr. Phil and all of that. And I was just wondering, how was that experience working? Because I think he just celebrated his 20th anniversary, and you had the pleasure of apparently being involved in that first year. So I was just wondering what that experience was like and what it was like. And it sounds to me that that's one of them cases of not burning the bridge, because I mean, they just celebrated, and you were one of the clips that they put out of there. So I'm
I got
thinking
the
that you still keep in touch with some of the management team with Dr. Phil. So I'd love to know a little bit more about your connection with the Dr. Phil and what he's been all about for, I believe, 20 years, if not longer.
Well, I got the call. Like I said, I got the call, and we got to all go through that the process to get green light, as they say. So I got the call. I got it from one of their supervising producers, Justin Arlook, and I have kept in touch. And I launched the first season of Dr. Phil with the team, and it was a lot of ups and downs, but it was what I would say about Dr. Phil is not only the energy, not only the magic, not only the joy of being a part of that broadcast, but reading his books. Reading his books has taught me a lot about myself, in which you find moments, light bulb moments they call, like what's it mean when you go to camp and you learn to swim or you accomplish something. And those moments you take into your livelihood or your adult life. And then on his broadcast, you're able to take that when you're dealing with the huge following he has and give the audience or the guests what they call in the business, as you probably know, takeaways.
Right.
So that was phenomenal. So it was that whole combination of that. One, being able to be part of that launch team. Okay, because we all came from diverse backgrounds. Two, it was the buzz of the time when they first jumped off. So just to get that call was amazing as well. And and then knowing you had the arsenal or the portfolio that he thought would help his team, because he's a tough guy. There's no doubt about it. The gentleman, the brother, I like to call him, and was standards were high. And so we came in, and I keep in touch with, I know the EP still, I know the soups, as they say in the biz, the shorthand, but the supervising senior producers, I know the executive in charge of production. I know many of the teams, the producers. So I do keep in touch. I actually had I took my family, my mom, my little girl, recently to one of my buddies who happened to be on the Dr. Phil's team, and we broke bread, so to speak. So when you have those relationships, you get the call, but no favors happen in the industry. I'm telling you that the favor world is over. So I had to do everything. I had to go through the pre-interview. I had to submit a video, even though I was part of the team, because 20 years, you have a lot of people going throughout the revolving door. But I'm glad it worked. I got a lot of love on social media about it. I was super excited. I was genuinely thrilled. I just thought, like in Hamilton, I got my shot. I thought the magic was there. I thought I was proud. I was really proud because I've been in a lot of teams. I started with Geraldo. I've been on Montel. I'm dating myself. I've been on Sally Jesse Raphael. I worked a little bit with Tanya. What's my girl's name? The fashionista. Worked a little Tanya Banks. Tanya Banks, I'm messing her name up. I'm all crazy. And Dr. Phil and so
Oh,
forth.
Tyra Banks.
Yeah, Tyra Banks, and then Dr. Phil, and then I bounced around and did a lot of local. So it's a loyal business. It's a very
It is.
loyal business, and so I was able to get the call. I was excited. I was blessed. I was thrilled, and I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you
No,
for bringing
no
it up.
problem. I'm glad to bring it up. And
You
it's a
know,
long business, but I did have a question of curiosity about it because like I said, I definitely, and I can agree with you dating yourself and everything because I did remember watching Geraldo and seeing, even Geraldo going after historical things and sometimes, doing that more gonzo journalism, which I actually was a fan of Hunter S. Thompson, who was one of the original gonzo journalists and the things along those lines. And definitely remember Sally Jesse Raphael and a number of others. But, there's this kind of clubhouse app that's out there now where a lot of people are creating their own versions of talk shows. I know there's a gentleman named Keontae that's having whole conversations around the pandemic and a number of other things. But I was just wondering, as one that's been in that TV production space, do you think that talk shows of that nature have seen their heyday and that they won't make a comeback? I mean, Dr. Phil is still around. Oprah has her own network, Harpo, and everything. But I was just wondering, what is your feel about this kind of like democratization of the talk show format? Because whether it's Clubhouse or whether it's Green Room or whether there's a number of other spaces, even what we're doing here on international broadcast media, more people are allowed to have these kind of formats, have these kind of conversations. And I was wondering, will that be the demise of talk TV and talk radio? But then again, I also remember that they said that radio itself went last, and the newspapers went last, and both of them are still around, even though sometimes people wonder about their futures as well. But as a producer, what are your thoughts?
well, I was going to go to the newspaper right away. I was going to say, if the newspaper's still around, the talk show world's going to be around, because we hate to say this and I hate to lead with it, but it's about the money. It's going to make money. It's going to be commercials. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. We know that they're going to survive. But not only that, even if your talk show is on a digital platform, even
Right.
if it's on a shorter world, the hour-long talk show, yeah, it's threatened. And what happens is that hour becomes a potpourri of information now. So we're gonna have segments, 6 minute segments on, Kyle Rittenhouse, 6 minute segments on the best Thanksgiving, vegan meals, best flowers to bring, Will Smith's new book. So there's going to be multiple segments. At one time, a talk show was just an hour long, but the span of attention for the audience isn't there. That's going to change. The tweaks are going to happen in the industry, no doubt about it. But I think Charlemagne the God has a new talk show, probably
Right.
be successful. Jon Stewart came back with a new show, probably be successful. The best probably talk show out there that's not on main television is probably what they call TRT, the Red Table, with Jada and her mother and her daughter. So
Right.
those are hot shows right now. Ellen's about to go off, but she's did 25 years. The salary of a talk show host is like winning the lottery every day. Right. So with that said, it's a new flavor. Your agent, get you a talk show. You've been on doing it on radio. You got an Instagram following. You just got to have that Zoom. Oprah launched Phil. Oprah launched a couple of other people who have talk show. Dr. Oz.
Right.
Dr. Oz isn't going anywhere. He probably just signed a new contract, quiet as it's kept, through 2025, if not through 30. As long as you have the youth and the energy, and you will tweak it. Geraldo did 20 years. He's still doing television. So the talk genre or syndication is going to live on. And it's business, it's communication. We still want to hear, how Oprah feels, what Will did, what's going on with Brad Pitt, what's happening with the Auburn case, what's going on with the front page of somebody's calling right now. I need Travis Scott. We got to get Travis Scott.
Right.
Travis, how did you react to that concert? We need to have a sit down and have a talk. Or who do you know? Alec Baldwin. I got to get to know what happened on that set. So as long as the world keeps ticking, Megan, Harry and Meghan, everybody wants Harry and Meghan. Harry and Meghan's probably going to get a talk show, but I don't know if they can swing it. Or some people are anti-talk shows. There's no doubt about it. Some people just can't stand them. The business is crazy. So they're mixing it up with the unscripted. What they say is unscripted. We know the Real Housewives, Atlanta, Washington, Potomac, Beverly Hills, Orange County is scripted television. It's scripted. But
And
the business is blossoming.
yeah, it sounds like it's blossoming, but that's one of the questions I was also curious about when I found out about some of your involvement and the PR angle and all of that, because I have heard people that have made money as the guest, and it definitely sometimes it does feel like it is more scripted than we would like to believe, and all of that. I was actually reading the book, it's about a gentleman that was reading the encyclopedia, and he was trying to read the entire encyclopedia. But a couple of times in that book, he talked about his efforts to go on Jeopardy, which is another form of a show that people like to go on to in terms of reality and seeing what your knowledge is and all of that. But we're hoping that these experts that we're watching are actual experts and that they actually know what they're talking about. And I think that for the most part they are. But then I've also heard about people that, you see them on one show and then they're on another show a week later and it's not even the same issue. Like a lot of those courtroom dramas is where I see that more than anywhere else and everything. But how much of that is something that people need to even be aware of, or do you think that most people just like don't even pay attention? They're just in there to watch the dialogue. And I do remember there were some shows that were really fun because of the conflict aspect. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I watched Maury, and part of the reason for watching Maury was you knew you were going to get some good dramas going on in that sense. And the same with some of those divorce shows and all of that, because oftentimes they would bring in relationship conflicts, and sometimes those were, they could get a little tense, but they could also be a little bit humorous. Even some of the more established shows like Oprah. But I was even thinking about an episode that she brought up where I think she had somebody that was in those one of those hate groups, and apparently they had a more recent episode where the person came back and revealed some of the things that they had acknowledged that they had done wrong in the way that they maybe were treating us as minorities, and they wanted to acknowledge some of their errors of their ways, for lack of a better term.
Well, a lot of shows do have a niche. Maury has a niche. Springer has a niche.
Right.
Geraldo had a niche. Sally had the niche. Dr. Phil has a niche. Ellen, they all have a niche. Kimmel, you Leno. they have a niche because they know how to attract that audience. That audience is that's going to watch them. It's the same thing about these 24-hour news channels. They're building up more editorial. They won't call it a talk show, but of course, Hannity is a talk show.
Right.
It's an editorial program. It's his opinion, his show, his managing, his producers. He's going to have it his way. On the opposite end, I don't know if we can even talk about Cuomo these days because all the Cuomo issues. But Chris has his own show. Don Lemon, Rachel Maddow. So these shows all have that component, and then they have the niche. And I was just watching the talk show because as a publicist for Always On PR, I put guest newsmakers on these talk shows so they can make news. So there is that. Every so often, listen, I can't run no slick games when doing under the table scenarios. Every so often there might be a prankster or a fakester, but many times that person gets caught. Sometimes they get through, but that's rare. Because just like when I, like I said, there's a process even for me as a talk show producer on the staff of Dr. Phil, we still had to be vetted. And that is capital V ETTE. You got to be vetted, and you vet them, and it goes through a process. You first talking to a booking producer, then you're talking to a editorial producer, then you're talking to a showrunner / show producer, then you're talking to a soup, and then you're talking to a senior soup. So by the time you get the 5 layers of talk show, one, you're already exhausted,
Correct.
and two, they vetted you. But there are people who get paid. Those are paid contributors. Like you might see Van Jones on the show talking about post election. He's a paid contributor. He's part of the staff of CNN. So he has negotiated a salary. Many people you see on it, like you might see a lawyer talk on NBC Now or NBC or something of that nature, or come on the show, the lawyers for the shooting that took place on the film set. They're not getting paid. They're doing it for branding, for clearing a name, for a talk show, for fame, for many reasons, all would have to do with the goal of the show, which is they want to peel back as much of this onion or envelope or truth to get to the bottom of it, and we're interested in it. The sooner it happens, the sooner we go. If Kyle Rittenhouse walks on his trial, that's the young 17-year-old pimple-faced young guy who shot 2 or 3 people in Wisconsin that night. If he walks, he's probably going to get a deal, and they're going to want to talk to him. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, everybody wants to talk to, right? He's just making news. So with this world, and what's so funny, Mark? The business of social media is propelling the more interest of talk show. I mean, listen, you could turn on Kim Kardashian kissing Pete Davidson, and you're like, okay, I got to book Kim. I got to book Pete. Pete's been on talk shows all week. Who
Right.
are you dating her? Are you dating her? Are you dating? He's like, he's not answering the question, and he's teasing us, and he's reeling us in, and teasing us, and reeling us in. And as soon as we wake up in the morning or before we go to bed, we're on Instagram or TikTok or whatever's out there. So it's a lot of words. It's the V word for vet. Like I said, I always use this. It's the R word for relevance. So talk shows, syndication, Cindy as they call it, it's not going away. It's a money maker. And look at 50 Cent. Look at Will Smith. These guys, they're starting to feed the talk world. Here's a crumb. Here's a crumb. Here's a crumb. And the audience, we like it. It's easy. It's digestible. We got great, how big is your flat screen? It's not only, it's so big. It's great for Netflix, but every so often when you do watch something, I'm not saying you're sitting around daytime television, because daytime television isn't really for the male audience. Daytime television has been kind of brought up to deal with what they call from Betsy or Betty from Idaho, that middle of America who's doing more of a traditional lifestyle as opposed to, some rock star from Malibu. You can't make a movie and you can't expect to also be sitting in front of the television or listening to it, because you don't have to sit in front of it anymore. You can just listen and get it. Maury, Phil, Ellen, Kimmel. I mean, the list is long,
No, the
and
list.
diversity is starting to come more and more in. So it's, people of color, Latinos, brothers, sisters, Filipinos, twins, we all getting a shot, so why not get a piece of the pie? So let's keep the, if they say the talk show's dead, let's keep it alive so we can all make that check that feels like we won the lottery every day. I love to have a check for 40 million every day because I'm on TV.
Hey, I would love that as well. That would be a great thing. I know that's one of the things that this network has been talking about. And you mentioned showrunners. I know that definitely our founder, Nicholas Palveda, as well as others, have met with different showrunners to talk about some of our more popular shows, including one that we have about lawyers called The Lawyer's Den. So I know he's met with folks, and one that's about the video gaming industry. So he definitely had those meetings and is trying to even shop what we're doing here. And like I said, this is more of a internet television network. We've got shows from around the world, actually, because I know that my friend Mike does one from Nigeria, and we've had shows from South Africa and a number of other places. So he is looking at us producers to try to find ways that we can either monetize what we're doing or actually possibly even have them shopped to some of the bigger platforms. So I do know that those conversations are going on a regular basis. But is one in the industry? Well, actually, I had a couple of questions. One is one of the things that he oftentimes talks about, and I've oftentimes brought up on this show, is so many of us are in show business. I think that musicians, I think that artists even know a lot of the show. I don't know that we know enough of the business world and things along those lines. So, as one in the PR world, what advice would you give to folks that are thinking about show business and don't know enough about the business? Because I'm even sometimes shocked when I see people that, whether it's a TV show or it's a concert, they don't even have a business plan. And I'm going like, well, how can you even do that? You've got to have the basics of business in that regard. So I was just wondering your thoughts about show business. And do you agree that some of us spend too much time on the show and not enough time on the business aspect?
That happens. That happens because we all have gifts, and some of
Mhm.
our gifts are in front of cam, and some of our gifts may not be the Excel sheets or the small print of the business. But once your money's on the table, once your
Mhm.
money's on the mahogany, as they say, you're gonna learn the business either highway or byway. Learn up, fail up, get broke, come back again. But if you don't have to suffer the hard falls of the money world, because you got to know the business behind the business, you're gonna have to read about it. It's really
Yeah.
no easy solution. You're gonna have to read about it. You're gonna have to learn up about it. You're gonna have to grind up about it. You're gonna have to set your cheese up, and you gotta be in the room where it happens. You gotta be in the room, and that's what I'm doing more of. It's taken me probably 10 years to get in the business aspect of it. You start talking those numbers. Like I was talking to somebody today. Actually, we were talking about a movie deal, a new Cinderella that should pop. And when the conversations are flowing, we were just talking about meeting at Sundance just to have a conversation because we're trying to raise 45 million. That was a real conversation. Sundance 2022 or meet at Art Basel December 3rd. Nobody can make December 3rd. It's too quick. But the deal is you want to have these conversations, and you're just going to have to keep pushing and prodding because people want to hear you if they think you got 10 cents or 10 billion. You're not going to get much with 10 cents. That's kind of like ha ha ha. But you know what? $10, if you go to the table and you say I have $10 is better than $0. If I got 500 grand, it's better than zero. If I got 2 million, it's better than zero. But there's never enough in the movie industry. It's never enough because they always gonna say, well, you got 13 million, you got 250 million. The deal with the business, and it's a bad investment too. The movie business is a bad investment. They say that all the time in these meetings. You just got to know the people and there you got to listen. You got to know the lingo. It's very important about the wording. And you just can't give up. And it's like anything, Mark. If you really want it, you need to have it. But the short answer to the short answer to a very heavy question is you really got to learn about business because a lot of us aren't really business savvy. You got to pick up a book, find out who your mentor is, read about him or her. My mentor in this business is Michael Ovitz, and I hate to mention it because a lot of people don't like Ovitz, but I read his book. I call it the Bible. And in that book, you read it over and over and over. You will learn about the business. You will learn about the big deal, which I was going to say, what your firm is having meetings. It's attachments. So if they bring Mark Lee into it as an attachment, that's one figure. If you bring Oprah in as an attachment, that's a different figure. It's the same thing with Netflix. You got Kevin Hart as an attachment, or you got Regina King. I'm naming all these African Americans because they on the top right now. It just seems every time you turn around, they're top, top, top. Selma Hayek, Angela Jolie. If you have an attachment, the number it's based on that. So you're bringing in Angela Jolie and Selma Hayek to a film project, and it's you coming into that meeting. So then for the numbers become, whatever the dream number it can be. And then it goes into negotiation and listening and lawyering and all that stuff. So it's a process, but you're gonna have to hold your ground, know your worth. It's all those things. It's not a simple process though. It takes months. I was on a film in Chicago this summer. We wrapped it and it's still going on. You're still pulling out money for post-production. You're still getting more funds. A lot of times you don't even want the deal. The new deal almost nowadays is, I don't need Disney to support my film. Like, sure, if it's a mid-level budget, like 45, 60 million, you're going to need some big pocket
Yeah.
somewhere. But a lot of times they want to get it done and then sell it to Paramount for licensing. And then Paramount comes back to you with 300. That's what Tom Cruise is doing. That's Tom Cruise gets 90 million on the front and, you know, 300 million on the back. Will Smith too, because their companies can finance the film. So then they complete the film. Once the script is written and you got the people in place and that film is starting to roll, you can, and it's your money. You can then, like you could do anything. You take an old car, you build it with your money, you put it up on and you sell it. You turn a 55 Chevy, that you paid $9,000 for, 40 grand to fix. You sell it for, 7 times as much, 230 grand,
Yeah,
easy. You
sounds
know,
like some good money and everything. I did have a question about the niche markets, and this is actually based on some of what you're saying. I've got a good friend of mine that's trying to get his funk band more back off the ground because it was off the ground in New York some time back. But he's also got his own network and things along those lines. And I know he's even been reaching out to corporations about trying to sponsor what he's doing. But it is a niche market, and those can sometimes be more difficult. So along those same lines, I was saying that we've got a chef that's been watching, and he was saying that he couldn't agree more with what you're saying, and that he is a Latino chef and a national expert in commercial electric kitchens. There's a huge movement behind electrical kitchens right now, and he wanted to know how could he capitalize on his growing presence and take the next step to a national audience. And do you have any advice on how he can get his message to a broader audience? And I think that that's a question that a lot of people are asking, including my friend with the funk band and all of that. So any ideas as to how folks can get their folks to a broader audience, particularly if they're in a niche market? I would imagine that chefs are in a niche market as well.
you know what you got to do? You have to plug. What I tell people when I get if a chef came to me and he couldn't afford a publicist or didn't want a publicist, because everybody can afford it, because it just, but not everybody can afford it, but you know what I mean. I'm not, no one's here to break your bank, but let's say you just didn't want it. Okay. So what you would have to do, and I tell this to my clients all the time, you got to hit the social media aspect. That chef is fabulous, right? So guess what's coming up? Thanksgiving's coming up. Christmas is coming up. Holiday dinners is coming up. You gotta get in the world. If you own a business, you can't just be a great chef. Like I had a guy I was trying to get on a couple of stations in the New York market who's a phenomenal chef, but his gig was something else. It kind of was a hobby, but he was incredible. But sounds like this chef with the Latino basis has a credibility, has a niche, is a chef. That's his title. He's got to get in front of some producers, just dig. They're sitting on Twitter, they're sitting in TikTok, they're looking for something, because a lot of times they don't want to come through a publicist, because publicists, we slow up the process, or we're a speed bump, got to go through me to talk to Jay, you got to go through Jay to talk to me. That slows it down. But if you want it, you could do both. I call it an end and around. You can get a publicist, if that's something you want to do, or just go around and hit it. YouTube, holidays coming up, you throw in show how to fry a turkey, show how to make a salad, put it on your IG, put it on your Instagram. I mean, it's work. The problem is I cut out the work. You
Right.
know, I cut out the work. I call my friend at Dr. Phil. I call my friend at Fox News. I call my friend. They're not all my friends, but in terms of relationships,
Right.
I put out a blast to like 1,500 producers saying I have a chef who's available, on the morning show to talk about 5 tips on how to make Thanksgiving for under $25 or under $100 or over $100. You got to spend it. You got to spin it. And I hate to use the word spin. You got to make a trend. You got to style it. You got to finesse it. You got to get them interested in what you have going on. Even I do it myself. I tell people all the time. You got to drink your water. You got to get your rest. You got to be involved. You got to be funny. You got to be humorous. You got to have energy. You got to be able to hit it. I will do the same thing. We walk the same walk. I do.
No, I
I don't know
agree, and I
about
hear.
every publicist. I
No,
do.
no, I hear you, and you got to walk that walk and all of that. One of the things I was curious about is, I've been a person that has reached out to podcast guests and potted before that, which I think has now been bought by Podmatch. And of course, there are different publicists as well. Like Eris Trader has got a lot of hip hop artists out of California and Hawaii and the West Coast. I know LSX has got a lot of technology people from around the universe. I mean, around the whole nation, and I think around the world as well. And I definitely will reach out to them, the various publicists, and have found some truly amazing guests. Hopefully, Jay will be sending me some guests as well. But that being said and everything,
Absolutely.
I was wondering your thoughts about what I call the scripted questions, because I do sometimes get the guests that will send you like the whole list. I don't mind using it as a framework for whatever our conversation will be, but I have some that, maybe they're in a controversial issue or a controversial thought and they don't want the questions to go but in a certain direction. And as a person that has a journalism major, I sometimes do not like those because I like the questions to be free flowing and just kind of like let people speak their truth. I'm also not one that's going to try to judge their truth either, because I've had some guests on that I may not agree what they've got to say, if they've got a conspiracy theory or if they think that people are coming down from Mars and things along those lines. But I still think that it's some important thing for us to use these PR services. But I was just wondering your thoughts about scripted questions, and do you oftentimes give your people scripted questions when you are eliciting people in the comment world, or is that something that you try to stay away from?
I absolutely stay away from that. And I would suggest you do less of it as much as you can.
Right.
Sure, Tom Cruise comes on your show and he says, don't ask about, Soul, my daughter. You go, okay, I wasn't anyway, but sure, we can. Those circumstances do come up. I'm also a journalism and I'm a BJ major from Newhouse, Syracuse. So we try to stay away from scripted questions. That's the journalism in me. I wear that hat as well, because it, like you said, it takes away from the flow of the conversation. That means you're looking at your questions and going, okay, so Jay, tell me about PR. Okay, Jay, so tell me about your life at, Geraldo. And you didn't even hear anything we discussed about the money and the plan, and it's just kind of cut and dry. And a lot of people do less of it because they feel that way. But there are sometimes you're going to get scripted. And you know what? Guess sometimes I get a framework of questions too.
Right.
Um, from producers who want to make sure we can talk about this topic. So it is a framework. The term these days might be more of bullet points
Right.
or TPs, talking points, and we could get in that. But they'll rip you, a host will dish you on there and like, oh, you too into your talking points, so why don't we have a conversation? So a lot of times, but at the same time, we have 12 minutes, we have 9 minutes, we got 4 minutes sometimes on these hits, and you want to cover a lot, and you really can't cover that much unless you're kind of focused and laser. So yes, there might be some framework, which is okay. We want to do the pillars of the world, but a lot of times I would do less of it. I would ask less of it. I would say, listen, the conversation, you can always decline. Do you have HIV? No, let's I'd rather not talk about that. Do you,
Right.
how's your love life? No, I'd rather not talk about that. And there's some, see, the thing about the business that makes it also a great engaging case is poise and finesse, because at the end of the day, you would like to have a dinner or a drink with the person. Like you and I, we would like to be able to go out and sit down at Maestro's or Nobu or somewhere and have dinner. Or I hear North Carolina has the best banana cream pie. So I would love to go to North Carolina for some banana cream pie and a black coffee. That's my favorite. So you want to have poise and finesse, and that's what's coming in more and more. It's like, well, You like Davison, for instance, and Kim. He was asked, does he date Kim? And he just spun it around, talked about his project, teased the audience in a kind of think on his feet way, and still was able to not answer the question, but at least be amusing at the same time. And that's a better talent, and that's a better talk show, and that's a better response, and a better engagement for the host and the audience. Sometimes we talk directly to the host
Right.
and we forget about the audience. Like the gentleman that wrote in,
Right.
Chef, take your
Matter of fact, he
time,
was even saying some
make
more
it
about his
simple.
business.
Yeah. Do your, he says, I do my own consultant business, focus on electric chairs. Great. Keep doing it and just use your Instagram and your functions, and you can build your, it takes time. This isn't a finger snap type of deal. And he's probably already put in years. He probably put in 8 years already.
Right.
But that's okay. You get up in the morning, do your push-ups, drink your water, whatever the case may be, and take another 8 years and keep doing it. You're gonna hit it. But that's the thing. Do less of the preamble questions, the setup questions, because it's gonna take away the energy of your interview, I
No,
think.
no, I agree with you. And one of the things I've seen a lot of people doing, we even saw it somewhere in the blackowned.com thing, is that a lot more people are trying to get, for lack of a better term, kind of gimmick things. And definitely they are very important, whether that's AR, whether that's VR, or whether that's a number of other things that are out there that can catch the audience. And it does seem like we're going into more of a hybrid world. We're even hearing people that are going to spend half of their workforce job in the office and the other half at home. It might even be more of a shift that you're spending more time at home than you are in the office. It might even be closer to 80-20 or 70-30%. And I would argue it's going to be more home than office. But I was just wondering, do you think that this kind of hybrid model that we're going into is going to help people get their message out? Because I am seeing more people that are looking at ways that they can incorporate AR or VR or some of the other things in their messaging. But I was wondering, is this just going to be a niche and like a passing fad, or is it going to be something that we're going to have to deal with for a while? I'm a judge for a movie competition here and everything, and I saw a movie recently where that was literally what was going on. At the end of the movie, the punchline was that literally the person was having their first kiss, and it turned out that the kiss was a entire virtual kiss because they went off into like some kind of one of those dystopian kind of world. So the whole world was looking very disaster, Mad Max kind of like world, but they had been in the booth and was having this beach peer encounter with their person and all of that and everything. But I am wondering, is that going to be the norm, or is this just a passing fad in your world and what you're thinking about PR? Or do you think we're going to use more VR tools, even in doing interviews and in doing other things that are going on?
Well, it's going to be here for a while. There's no doubt about it. One, it saves money. Two, it saves time. Three, like you and I could be a guest because I couldn't get there if I couldn't. And the digital platform and the digital world is new, is fresh. We want to keep it alive. Would it be better? Like I was saying, the Sundance scenario, certain festivals, being in the studio, absolutely. And it's going to happen too because the energy and the engagement is somewhat, lessened. The thing about staying and also being at home and working from home and doing interviews from home work for some people, but there's a new study that just came out recently said we're sitting too much again. And that's going to make us old and tired and worn and irritable and cranky. So, we need to get you in that car, in the studio, up off your backside and in front of somebody, get in front of people, because you can't stay home with the trees and your dog and your table and just think this is great. It's great. Yes, it's great. Instead of going to a studio 45 minutes for a 7-minute segment and then get in the car in traffic again and drive, now the 45 minutes has become 2 hours because it's rush hour. That's a drag. Yes, I get that. But I'm getting cold out here. But for the world of worlds, we want to get back into that business because that, as you said before, that makes money. For me to get in the car, have a coffee, have a pretzel, get to the studio, shake a hand, buy dinner, buy a drink, get back in the car, buy gas, that makes money. That keeps the world moving and grooving, So we want to get that happening in as much as we can when we can. But like everything else, you got to be smart about it. You can't just just jump and doing it. But I see more and more studios opening. I'm pushing for it. Guests look better in studios. They got the hair, the makeup, their energy's up, the lighting's better. So it's more energy. And frankly, even myself included, we don't always have the best virtual shot.
Right.
So that takes away from the vibe of the show. It's like, oh yeah, your trees are distracting me. Oh yeah, your stainless steel is really nice, but why is your stainless steel more of an attention than you are? Oh,
Right.
your lighting's there. Oh, those dark curtains. Everyone's looking at everything else. Like, oh, this, oh, that. So that gets deaded. Um, so yeah, but digital, virtual technology, that's happening. You got a new phone, why not use it? It's quicker. You have more guests, you have more options. The options have opened, and frankly, if you got bad health or you're sick, now if you not just if you have the flu or a cold, but now if you're even dealing with anything else, the COVID pandemic, we don't want you in the studio. We
Right.
don't want you near anybody. We don't want you getting sick. We don't want me, it's a safety thing too. And whether you have the vax or not the vax, and I'm not taking this down a political road at all. It's your body, it's your choice, and all that. But you still have to be respectful of people, and we don't want you got to be tested or this, that, and the other. So, but I think it gives you more options. I do think virtual gives you more options, though. That because you can have somebody now, you can have Naomi Campbell talking about what the industry's like. She may not be in North Carolina. She might be in Africa, Cape Cod somewhere, SA, South Africa, but you can have her because she can beam up on the Zoom, or in this
Yep.
case, SteamYard, which is
Right.
phenomenal. You
Yep,
know?
they can definitely do that, and I agree. It's such a phenomenal thing, and I've had some amazing guests. And like you said, sometimes those guests overseas are wonderful. Sometimes you've got to also deal with time changes. So I've even done pre-records on occasion because it might be 4 here, but it might be like early in the morning in London or in Australia. So I try to work around people's schedules and all of that because sometimes they might be in a place that I can make a quicker adjustment than they can, and all of that. So definitely, I've even done that here where I've had interviews with people from definitely London. I want to say some people from Ireland and other parts, even like some of the African nations, and even like one of our guests that comes on our news show every morning beams in from Australia. And we do that at 10 a.m., which means that it's like 2 or 3 in the morning where he's at because they're so far away and everything. But he loves
Right.
coming on the conversation, and we're having discussions around a number of issues, including some that might be controversial. We've talked about CRT, critical race
Oh
theory. We
yeah.
talked about LGBT issues and a number of other things. And like I said, we're not always on the same side. So it is definitely some back and forth conversation that can be real fun and all of that. It's one in the PR field, and you alluded to it earlier. I was just wondering your thoughts as to and maybe it comes up with gun control. If you want to dodge it, that's cool too. If you don't want to talk about it, but what are your thoughts about what did happen with Alex Baldwin? Because I'm sitting there going, like, this seems to be a conversation that a lot of people have on their mind. I do have friends in the movie industry and even those that are in the theater industry, and some of them have dealt with props. And it seems to me that tragedy should not have happened. Just like Travis Scott shouldn't have happened. And I've done concerts. I've actually been involved in concert planning, so I do sometimes think that we do not do a great enough job of personal security or even security in those fields. But Jay, I'm just wondering your thoughts about both of those because both of those seem to be safety issues. And like I said, I know that we've had some interesting things, and we try to make sure even here when we had the blues festival at a local ballpark that we had a certain amount of police officers and that we were on top of things with constant walkie-talkie conversations and things along those lines. But I just don't know whether we're doing enough of that. And part of that may be that we're short-staffed in everything. But I was wondering your thoughts.
Well, and also in all that kind of recklessness, I was going to bring up that football player who was driving over, I don't know, 130 miles an hour, drunk, and crashed and killed somebody. It seems like there's a little bit of recklessness going on in today's world. Now, that's a general statement.
Right.
Specifically in the Alex scenario, that film, I mean, recklessness, yes. For some reason, in my mind, I think there was I don't know if, unfortunately, the armor all seems to be the finger blame seems to go to her, but for some reason I have a feeling they just kind of was doing some movie fun in a way, or just kind of because they had guns on the set, right? Everyone's saying there should never have been live rounds. I just saw The Harder They Fall, a Western with Idris and Regina King, and they were shooting up a storm on that movie. I mean, it was gun shooting everywhere. But apparently, there's never live rounds, or there's rarely live rounds. This case, either they got mixed up, which I'm not buying. I'm not buying that a box got mixed up, and I'm not buying that it was there was a double check somehow, and that's why there's a piece of tape out there they're not releasing. They're not releasing that conversation that happened between Baldwin and that director, or if there was anything on that set where they were maybe shooting cans or shooting guns, just because we get on these sets, you're in the middle of nowhere, you have guns, you might be doing target practice, but somewhere along the line something careless was occurring prior to the deadly incident, that they were just so comfortable with the firearms and the bullets and the this and the that, that all of a sudden there was a reckless mix-up. So that's that. When I woke up and read about the Astro World scenario with Scott, and I know a Drake was there and a death, I was just like, I was kind of like, wow, what's going on? Frankly, I'm not listening to that type of vibe of music as much. But from what I'm doing, and I'm doing a lot of guest placement on this topic, is that I'm kind of coming to understand that they play those concerts like a big rave, like it's like a mosh pit, and so to see bodies kind of floating along the top is almost like a norm. So I mean, I I know somebody with the deepest pockets is going to get sued, because we're all conscious of that. But I can see how the artist in that case can get confused to like a concert going crazy and having a lot of fun to, oh, I didn't know that person was dead. The lights are in my eyes. I couldn't see. But I understand, unfortunately, in that incident, we know every millisecond of that concert is being recorded, because I just went to a Shaka Khan concert on Sunday, and everybody had their phones out taping it and listening and sending it on Instagram as it's happening. So I know that was happening there. So as all these evidence of videos and tapes and hits and social media and so forth get corralled and checked out, we're going to see a little bit more of what's happening. But basically, if this was also an incident where somebody had to run to security, run to the police, and plead and say, please listen to me. There's a dead person here, or something tragic is happening. I need urgent help. Problem with that is it doesn't seem like we take each other serious under these pressure drone scenarios, and we keep allowing the action to happen as opposed to just like pumping the brakes and listening. And I don't know if it would have saved a life or hurt a life, but that's a situation in which, as you said, you've seen concerts and that have occurred, and now all of a sudden there's people are just not doing this or not doing that in concerts, or film sets are now no guns, no live ammunition. It makes a harsh change, and it's like that old saying, and it's really too light of a saying to say, but it's like it's all fun and games till someone gets hurt.
No, I
And
agree
in
with
those
you.
situations, they really got hurt. And that's a very light statement, because, of course, we don't want anybody to be hurt. And we pray and bless that it doesn't happen to us or anybody, of course. And we want all the families to heal. But, they're coming after you. And I just heard today, Alec is being sued. He's now listed, as they're going after him, criminal charges, because not only was he an actor, he was a producer on the show. So that makes him part of the money people, part of the business. And he's got deep pockets. He's got a name, and I'm sure he doesn't want to get dragged into the name. So all that, however, is going to be settled in some room over mediation. Both cases, even the football player, that's going to all be settled in the back room of some mediation. The problem with the football player, though, is that he might end up going to some type of correctional facility.
I
Alex
think
isn't going to a correction facility.
no, Alex isn't going to a correctional facility. I do agree that football player might wind up serving some time. And as you were talking, I was actually remember there's a concert that's in the country part of North Carolina. It's actually outside of Pittsburgh. I can't remember the exact town name and everything, called the Shikoria Hills Festival. They do it twice a year, and I literally remember, stepping over people that were engaged in some serious intimacy. I'll just put it that way and
Yeah.
everything. And I'm going like, wait a minute, this is something that probably I didn't need to be running across and everything in the middle of a concert. And there were probably even children there as well. But I was there with the lady friend at the time, and I'm going like, okay, this isn't exactly what I was planning to step on, because, like I said, you're walking through the concert and they're in the middle of not quite the full act, but it was close enough, and it was definitely a little bit scary. And I know that that can happen in some concerts and all of that. Speaking of which, Chris apparently had to get ready to leave and everything, but he did want to thank you for the conversation and hope that you can connect with him at some point. And he gave his email and all of that, so he's definitely hoping that you will reach out to him, or that y'all can exchange information and all of that. And I'm all about helping people in that regards. And we have a fellow PR person, this one out of California, and I know that she's done a lot of PR work, and that is Sherry Darnice Burrell, and she's been part of my show in terms of putting her comments and things, and she's out of Beverly Hills. So definitely wanted to say hello to her, as well as Elizabeth Leby, who is watching from sunny Southern Florida. And I miss Southern Florida because I used to go a couple of times down to the National Black the National Black Theater Festival is Winston. The American Black Film Festival is there in South Beach. And I went there for at least 2 or 3 years. Really enjoyed that environment. And hopefully, if we get back to doing more travel, like you want to do with the Sundance Festival, we can
Right.
actually get back to going into these things in live and in person. Virtual is all right. And like I said, I've judged some film festivals. I'm actually in the process of judging two right now. One that is a documentary film festival, and another that is in that horror and fantasy space. And while I'm enjoying watching some of the films, and by the way, Jay, some of these films, and I'll just be honest about it, they're not that great. Some of them you're sitting there going like, wait a minute, who told y'all that y'all were filmmakers? And some of them also have this nagging habit of going automatically to YouTube and all of that, which is good in some degree. But as you know, that kind of like automatically eliminates you, because why would you be part of a film festival if everybody's already seen the film? So I never understand why people will do that and will sit there and make themselves go viral maybe a little bit too fast. But I was wondering your thoughts about that, because I do see sometimes people want to get that viral hit, they want to get that viral energy. But if you're going for the film festival circuit, you might want to wait to put it on YouTube. Just some advice that I would give people.
It's that joke. It goes to microwave first, right?
Right.
Listen, viral is a big deal this day because a lot of people get paid by going viral. The more clicks that happen, the more you get paid. I mean, YouTube, like you said, go to YouTube. I mean, that's all I ever say. Like and subscribe, and that's a check comes back. But I want to go quickly back to Travis for a second, because I hear
Yeah.
they may be canceling Coachella.
Wow.
Where I'm sure you stepped over a lot more than somebody sliding into third base, so to speak,
Right.
intimately speaking. But so I just wanted to bring that up. But heading back over to the virtual, and if the film's not ready, you know what? Art is tricky that way, because
Yeah.
art is what somebody's trash may be somebody's treasure. So, there's been some movies like there's a new movie coming out called Clifford, like a dog movie or something of that nature. And I know I'm not going to watch Clifford, pay to watch Clifford, and nor even if it was complimentary, I don't think I had the hour time to just watch that type of movie. So, but to somebody else, that could be the end all, the winner of all wins, and an Oscar nomination to many people. I'm just not one of them. But I even watch sometimes shows that I don't really love just to help them with the ratings. Like there's been
Right.
some Will Smith stuff. Chappelle I watched over more than one time, because I felt if you watch it more, it gets a rating. There's a message there, lets people know you like it. Not only you like it, but it's a money maker. This brother deserves everything he does. So the appreciation of art and culture is something not to take for granted, and you can't get mixed up with the clicks as much. But if you are, why not give a click? I'm kind of into that. I don't mind giving somebody a click or a shout out if that's the case. It doesn't hurt me, and I feel like it helps them. And I want to support the art as much as I can, when I can, and if I feel is worthy of my support.
Speaking of Chappelle, what was your thoughts around the whole controversy between him and the transgender community? It does seem that sometimes we have this divide and conquer mentality, maybe putting the Hispanics against the African Americans or the LGBT community against women or a number of other things that goes on in society. And to my mind, that might have been what this was. But I was just wondering your thoughts about this whole controversy with Chappelle, and if even talking about him possibly, maybe even thinking about returning back to the motherland. But then again, I've heard that Stevie might be thinking about going back to the motherland as well.
Well, I think Chappelle is on steady ground right now. I think I think if you once you watch his show, you see that it makes it's smart. It's not as offensive as a headline might say, and that's the problem in a lot of cases. The headline is so spewing and fire and fuego and lit and Gucci and flushy and all this other terms that it makes you think, you know, mind blown, mic drop. And then you watch it. That's why I said before we meet, you got to watch this doc. You got to watch this show. And you'll see I'm not even going after anybody in such a rude manner. So I thought Chappelle, one, as an artist, was great. Two, I was happy that he has some support from Netflix because many times, as he even mentioned in his comedy special, that Kevin Hart wanted to be, this cancel culture is killing people. Kevin Hart wanted to be the Oscar host for 1 year. That was his dream, but he got canceled because, somebody went into his tweets and dug out and find that he said something, inflammatory about a group. So Chappelle stood up, he did his thing, he stayed bold, he stayed true, and it was good to see because we needed to see a victory in this world of cancel culture because everybody just can't go down. I mean, it's really destroying. Listen, this is not me too. We're not saying me too. We're saying, words hurt. Words hurt. And we're saying, if he was divisive, if he had said something inflammatory, and if he does and had, then he was willing to meet. But before he made the meet, he wanted at least to have a conversation that was on equal playing ground and not just to go after the attack. I believe in my heart of hearts, we all, Chappelle, you, me, the world, we're not intentionally out to make anybody feel bad or, we don't trust or believe in who they are. Those days are over. There used to be a time growing up, you might ridicule somebody on their sexuality, or it might have been, kind of a joke at lunchroom, or you'd be like they say back in the day, the dozens, or snapping on people. But now we understand this is a real scenario. If your lifestyle is your lifestyle, it's well respected. It's like a special ability or disability. You're not gonna laugh at the person in the wheelchair or a person on crutches. We're not really judge. We're trying not to. Race seems to keep coming up. Race is definitely something that's getting under people's skin. But even that, I believe we're trying to do less of. So race, religion, faith, lifestyle, we're not out to attack anybody. And Chappelle is a good example of that. And not only that, he uses the N word like 24/24, but he's talking about everybody. So, I mean, again, that's his audience. That's a niche. He's an artist. Do we cancel him for his art or do we embrace him for his art? In my case, I'm embracing Chappelle.
I agree. I think that that's what more people need to be doing. I was actually just talking to a friend of mine who's celebrating. I'm part of a puppet group that I actually got recruited to be part of called the Funky Hot Puppets that is on Clubhouse and everything. And I provide the voice of Echo, but there are different people, including some folks that were injured by bullet wounds and some folks that are fighting different diseases, whether that's MS or AIDS or a number of other things. And I do remember that one of the people, Shello Phoenix, talks about actually making blind jokes, and he is a blind person. So actually, that is something that I find that he even enjoys doing, and actually enjoys having fun picking on his own self and things along that nature. And I've seen even folks that are in the disability world that will have fun acknowledging what they're going through, but also teasing in a fun kind of way and not feeling that it's going to be an insult to them and everything. Now, there can be I don't want to say a double standard, but there can be the messenger can be also an issue depending on how the message is delivered. Because I'm thinking some of those jokes, like if a certain European American tells some jokes that feature the N word, don't think that's going to go over that well. And I would say the same thing with sighted people if they're telling blind jokes in a facetious way and in a negative way, because that can be the issue if you're taking it in a bad context. So that's just be my thoughts about it. But I would love to know your thoughts. Do you agree that sometimes it can be the way that it is told, and people need to pay attention to the messaging, for less lack of a better word?
I think people do need to be taking, listening to the message. Listen, there's been artists, whether it's George Carlin, whether it's Richard Pryor, the content, the being a comedian is just not the joke. Being the comedian is the message. Murphy is the message. He was so poor, he used to scream for his mother to throw out change for ice cream. It's a message of an experience. Carlin with the 7 bad words. It's a message. Anybody. So there's more to it. So I feel that and a lot of people do make fun of themselves. Seinfeld makes fun of his culture and religion 24/7, 8, 9, 10, which makes it funny. But there's a message getting across. And so you can't like some in a case and dislike another or just go after attack. But there is power. People do, protest and picket. There will be instances when they come after you or come after an artist or come after, a voice. Right now it's an empowerment move. I mean, women's movement, men's movement, LGBTQ movement. There's a lot going on, and that's why I say social media again is important. It's an important tool that can be used for your voice, whether it's trying to get on air, whether it's trying to stop something, whether it's trying to get out a vote. It's a tool that has a lot of successful use, but it can of course be misused or misconstrued and backfire. Anything could backfire. But I think for the most part, and you know what? We're open enough because it's news. So we're open enough. We heard, from the LGBT community or the trans community, and we also heard from Chappelle. So
Right.
now, like everything else, let's make an intelligent decision. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's have a negotiation and let's see if we could come to a solution. As long as we try to come to a solution, that's the great thing. And that's part of, the law and the wisdom of how we've changed and adapted in today's world.
No, no doubt about that, and everything. Getting to wrap up with you, and then I've got some ads and everything that I might be bringing in and wrap up the whole show very shortly and everything. But one of the things that we do on this show regularly is a couple of things. One is sometimes people get frustrated by the inner critic, and you've alluded to it even with some of the conversations we've been having and everything. But as one that's been in this PR game for a number of years, what is your advice to people when they are too caught up in hearing the inner critic, or maybe even the critics in their own family, whether that's a spouse or a kid, if they've got kids and everything, or whether that's the inner critic, because sometimes our inner critic can be our worst critic. So I was just wondering, as a PR specialist, and I'm sure you run across that even with your clients, where they're listening too much to the inner critics, how do you get them out of their own head? Because I think sometimes we don't do enough things, and you had talked about those relationships. We don't even do enough things in terms of creating our dreams because we're too busy listening to the inner critics. If I was to go back to Black Owned, that's one of the things that I've loved about Donna and definitely Quentin and a number of other people, is that it doesn't seem to me that they were listening to people that might be naysaying this whole idea. And I would say the same thing about Nick and Kim here with this network. But we do know that sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. I have probably lost jobs, including some in the event space, because of talking myself out of them before even going for them. And I'm sure you run across that even with some of your clients. So I was just wondering, how do you get people out of their head or out of the having the other people talking into their ear? Because we can also listen to folks that we probably don't need to be listening to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, it's the funny thing is I've been having these experiences all in the last 72 hours. So Sunday, prior to the concert, I'm at the Peninsula Hotel in New York, and I'm meeting a brand new client, and I am pulling her out of her own head. Because you put challenges in front of yourself. You tell yourself, am I this? Am I that? Can I do it? Can I do it? And we all do it. We're friends of friends, and we all play, by listening, you play therapist, you play coach, you play cheerleader. And a lot of times you have to do that with people. And I do it frequently, and they do it with me too. But I do it frequently. Like, no, you're phenomenal. Tell yourself you're phenomenal. You can do this. Just don't be shy. Don't do this. Don't do that. Be prepared. So you don't want to listen to your listen. You gotta. I do tell people trust your gut.
Yeah.
Trust your gut. Trust your heart. If it's really anti a decision, trust it, because by doing the decision that's so anti, you will flop and hurt yourself. But if it's a thing of insecurity or subconscious or just maybe fear or anxiety, I mean, all these are real emotions, by the way. But if it's a matter of that, let's try to check our mindset. Like we were saying, like you said at Black Owned the other day, let's try to check our mindset and see if we can get to an optimism place, a place that we know we can do this, a place that we know our value, we know our worth, we know where we stand, what we have. You got to find a motivation, and nobody is really going to motivate you, drive you more, sell you more, be your best cheerleader more than you. I even sometimes when I don't even meet meetings, I set up meetings all the time. I used to go, but again, that by me showing up is speed bumps, because then it could become about anything. I wear a pair of shoes, it becomes my running shoes. I come late, it becomes about my come, and it throws off the business of the business. You go, they go, one on one, nice sandwich. You sell yourself. Nobody's going to do it better than you. If you flop, I can clean it up. If you do great, I can make it better. That's when I come in. But sell yourself better than you. But a lot of times you got to get out. Like I said, I was at brunch, and it was just like, and it wasn't an incredible scenario. But the short answer and the bottom line is, don't let yourself get in front of your dreams. Dream, move it, make it happen, take the leap of faith. You can do it. You've done it. If you really look at it, you've already done it. You've set it up. I give people samples all the time. And we all have to do this in the business. You got to watch your own self so you can learn up and get better. But anyway, I know you got to go. I got to go. Look, the
No,
sun.
yeah, definitely. Just really quickly, one of the things I ask people at the absolute end is this is an international platform. So I ask them their message of positivity, their message of hope, and all of that. And by the way, just really quickly, my good friend Tim Sohn, who is part of the Voice Your Vibe crew and just recently started a show actually yesterday about cancer survivor and being a cancer survivor, is in Pennsylvania. I think he's in Altatona or something like that. I forget the exact name of the city, but I know he's in Pennsylvania, and he oftentimes talks about it's the land of the bears and the deers. And I did see that nightfall was starting to happen there, as it's happening here in Durham as well. So those bears and deers are probably going to come out and have a party, and we don't want you to be in the middle of their party. But that being said, if you can let folks know how they can reach you and any message of positivity and hope that you would like to share with our international audience. And I love your energy, Jay. I told you that when I met you on blackowned.com. And anytime that you want to come on, I'd love to have you back on anytime that you're available. And if you want to send me any of your clients, I'd love to have them on as well. But tell folks how they can reach you if they're interested, and also any messages of positivity and hope. And then I'll let you bounce. And I've got some commercials to run and a little contest that I do as well, which is basically a trivia contest. So that'll take me about 15 to 20 minutes, and I'll get ready to get on out of here as well. But definitely, those are the two quick questions: is message of positivity and hope, and how folks can reach you.
All right. Well, my message of positivity, hope, is to just dig in and love yourself, and just
Mm-hmm.
my lady always tells me, you love yourself, you love myself, and I'm like, you damn right, love yourself, and just keep on, and have some humor.
Mm-hmm.
Humor helps. It's just love yourself, have some humor, and dream. Go for it. Go for it. That's the brief off the cuff positivity of hope. I read a lot. Billy Porter, 50 Cents, the Obamas. You read these books, you get amped up. You like, I can be 50 Cents. 50 Cents is a guy, he's hardcore. You find that person who's like you. He's hardcore. He's been through a lot. He always goes, I'm not the smartest, I'm not the prettiest, I'm not the best looking in the room, but I'm making things happen. This guy's got 2 major shows on major networks.
Mm-hmm.
He saved his grind. Know your energy too. Use your energy. That's my new one that I've been telling people. Know how to use your energy. Know when to be in it, and know when to pull back. So that I think is good, and optimism and positivity always helps. Take care of yourself. You'll feel much better. You'll do much better. Getting in touch with me is I'm everywhere. J Jones always on PR.com. That's spelled out Jay Jones. So it's J Jones, first and last name, always on PR. Instagram, social media, LinkedIn, of course. President of Always On PR. Been doing this. Something should pop up. If you just put always on, it may not pop up. But if you put J Jones always on PR and Google it, it'll pop up. And on my website, there's all my information, my link, my social media, my cell. And I'm still old school. I got a landline that you can reach me as well. So I'm around. And I love to put guests on your show. It's a pleasant atmosphere and platform, I was trying to say. And they get to talk and they get
Thank
to
you.
have a good conversation and have time. They should probably do it indoors like I should have done, but I thought I'd come out because for some reason the sun was going over the mountains and now it's dusk to dawn and now the deer are coming out. I got to walk my dog and do all this old crazy stuff. So it looks like I have a fire in front of my face, but I don't. It's just, I don't know. It's the Western sun, I guess.
The Western
Or my
Sun doing the
lighting.
Western Sun thing, and like I
Yeah.
said, Tim oftentimes teases about those bears and deers, and he does a lot of different shows. He actually just was producing and live stream hosting with another friend, Brian Showman, who's got the Voice Your Vibe company out of San Diego. And he's, like I said, is in Pennsylvania. So he's always bringing some good humor. And like I said, he's definitely talking about this important issue of being a cancer survivor as he's fighting leukemia. And a number of other folks are on that are dealing with other aspects of that struggle. So it ought to be some great conversations. I know I watched the initial episode yesterday and learned a lot about both Tim, as well as Kara Oker, who is his co-host, who is more of a cancer supporter and an ally, whereas he is the one that is actually going through this process. But I think that she's lost some family members to it as well. So it is a very important issue that a lot of folks are dealing with. So Jay, I'm gonna let you slide on out to bring up a couple of my commercials and everything. But it's been fun, and I look forward to seeing you back
Thing.
in the very near future. I'll reach out to you on LinkedIn, and we'll make this happen again. Maybe next time you'll be in an office and everything. But I thoroughly enjoyed our
No doubt.
conversation,
One
and
last
we'll have
thing
to
I was
learn
gonna
more
say
about your
is,
history as well.
yeah, I was gonna say, don't put yourself in a box.
Right.
Don't box yourself in. Watch titles. Just you could do anything. I went out. Quick story. I went out for a part in like my community's play. Now I know it's just a community. It's not Broadway, but I got the part. It's like I never even thought I was doing. I was doing some exercise. I just ran in, did it, and that. But it's a commitment. But I got it. So don't box yourself in. Just live. Try
No,
your best to live.
no, I couldn't agree with you. If somebody had told me last year that I would be the voice of a puppet named Echo, I would have told them probably that they were crazy because I have dabbled in acting, but I would not consider it part of my norm and everything. But my friend IPC, who's there in Clubhouse and who I had the pleasure of interviewing, he was like, "Hey, I like your personality. I like your voice. I think that you would be a good voice for the character Echo." And I've now had that part for about, I want to say, 3 months or something like that, and have done 3 performances and a interview type deal that we did earlier today where IPC was interviewing both the characters as well as the voices and the actors behind the characters, and we did that. And I think next week, on next Wednesday, we'll be doing another performance. So that'll be my fourth performance. And I'm sitting there going like, if somebody told me that this would even be happening, I would have said probably not. But then again, I don't know that I would have thought that I would be live streaming and producing as I did this past weekend for Black Owned. So a lot of times, like you said, you have to step into both your old reality, but also your new realities, because there's no telling where your dreams and your destination may take you. So I could not agree with you more. We just have to follow our path and go along with how they are gone and everything. And who knows? I might be winding up being a client of Jay Jones after a while if I keep on not looking out and everything. And I might appear on Oprah or Dr. Phil, but who knows? That will just have
I
to
can
see.
get you on, as they say, always on, always. They tell me always on, but always late. But I can get you on. That's one thing I can do. But listen, it was awesome talking to you. Have a wonderful day, a great Veterans Day, and let's set this up. I mean, or have a great Thanksgiving if I don't talk to you. But let's spin me back around. I'd love to be back on the program anytime, and I'll send some of my people your way as well. You're
Sounds good.
fantastic, Mark. You're fantastic. Love it.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Look forward to more conversations with you in the near future. Like I said, I'm going to bring up some of the other shows that we've got,
Hey.
including one that's called The Gamers Den. So I'm going to bring up a little bit of information about that. And then, like I said, I'll bring up some of the test questions about our panel and all of that in terms of our mystery guests. I said I was going to try to get on 3 of them, but I might only get on 2, depending on how things go in that regards. But I am going to bring up some of our other shows that exist, as well as some things that y'all may be interested in that regards. And of course, one of them is the Gamers Den. Like I said in the past, that was at 12. Then we moved it, well, I think actually it was at 1 on Thursdays. Then we moved it to 12 on Thursdays. And now it's at nighttime at 9. It's at 9 p.m. But let's check out what this is all about. And hopefully y'all will join and catch it at a future time. But definitely, maybe you'll even catch it this evening's show at 9 p.m. But let's check out the Gamers Den. And speaking of dens, how about the Lawyer's Den, which I believe airs now Monday through Fridays, and it's always got some engaging conversation. Let's check out what they're all about. And my friend Coco, she's always got some amazing conversations going on and some amazing things happening in her world. Her show usually airs Thursdays at 6. I think this coming week, as well as next week, they might be reruns. But let's just check out her amazing music. And in a little bit, I'll be bringing up those contest questions. Like I said, there'll be at least 2. There might be 3. But we'll definitely bring them up. And that'll be our mystery guest. And by the way, don't forget that we are still looking for clips of music if you'd like to be featured as part of our talent showcase as well. So that's something we're adding in addition is the talent showcase. And don't forget, you can join yours truly doing a whole lot of trash talking and maybe trying to do some decent, if not great, lip syncing on a show that is called the Lip Sync Battle, which is part of Brian Shulman's show that he has on Wednesday nights now. He's another show that has moved around as well, because it used to be Wednesday afternoon, and then his people moved to being there in the East Coast. It'd be in late, and there's still some of us on the East Coast where it's late and everything. So it is now a nighttime thing. But who knows? It might eventually go back to afternoon, as Tim, the main producer that made it go to the kind of evening time, is now got his own thing going on. And I've alluded to that a couple of times during this show. But let's check out Coco's music, and then I'll bring up some of those questions as well.
Come on and let's bless God on today, because he's so wonderful. And when we come into the house of the Lord, we should give him honor and we should give him praise.
Hello, I'm Coco McMillan, and thank you for watching my EPK.
Today, I come to the house of the Lord to say,
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and I was raised in St. Paul's, North Carolina.
I sing your praises too.
So I've been singing ever since I was 5 years old. I was with a group that my grandmother formed, and all of us were cousins, and we were named the True Tone Juniors, and my grandmother used to take us around and sing, and we had a wonderful time as kids growing up singing with my grandmother.
The Alpha, Omega, beginning.
So my grandmother influenced me to sing as a child, just going around with the group, singing as a kid. She really influenced me to continue to sing. And then I started singing with this group called Actuality in the clubs, and that's when I was discovered by Gerald Levert.
Coco McMillan featuring Gerald Levert. Let's welcome them. Yeah.
Praise the Lord, everybody. How many of you out there has been through a storm in your life? But yet through it all, God has still kept you.
But the funny thing about that is when they discovered me and when we went on that interview to do the audition, I wasn't chosen. I was not selected, but God works in mysterious ways. But it circled back around, and where I was chosen, they did another retake, and I was chosen. And then I sung with the Gerald for 11 years, and one day I heard the voice of the Lord when He was telling me, Coco, it's time.
I was wrong, yeah.
After all the blessings He bestowed on me, I know He deserves so much more. I know it's right, I know it's real, I know His word will be fulfilled. Temptation, please be still, be gone. So He knows.
When I heard the voice of the Lord, I immediately went to Gerald and told him that it was time for me to leave the camp. And I thank God for him because he supported me. He said, Coco, you're ready, and I'll support you in anything that you do. So that's when I left Gerald's camp, went into gospel, and God has just really been opening doors for me ever since I made that change.
No one can do what you do. Hard words. Use me, Lord. Precious Jesus, take my hand, lead me on, Lord, let me stand. Forgive me for straying away so long. Hold me, keep me from doing wrong. Oh, in your hand I put my life to be used. Have your way, Lord. My trust is in you.
So I think what makes me different from other artists is I've seen both of the worlds, from the secular world and the gospel, and what's unique about it, you know, I work for IBM, so I have a full-time job, and I still, you know, able to do my ministry and, you know, really connect with the youth and the students at different colleges. So I think that's what makes me unique and different as other artists, because I have that level of experience where I can kind of reach out and engage with different caliber people on both worlds.
This next young lady has opened for Kim Burrell, has an incredible instrument, and she's going to take that instrument and bless us with it here today. She has and still sings with Gerald Levert, and deep in her heart, her love bubbles over for the love of Christ that she has in her song. Would you put your hands together for a member of the Mitchell Grove Baptist Church from Raleigh? What y'all call it? Nankalaki?
North Kakalaki.
North Kakalaki. All right, put your hands together for our ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Coco Macmillan.
There's a leak in this soul.
back to the community and to different artists just by helping them out, just by giving them that level of experience that I had experienced, and just going back and pulling them, helping them, because as an artist coming up, as a new artist, it was hard for me. You know, I really didn't have a lot of people to help, but those that I did, they helped, they came back and helped me. So I want to reach back out and help the new artists that's coming up and let them know that they can do it and don't give up. Some of the things that I'm doing now, I work with the youth in the choir. I also work with the abuse of children, child prevention. I also do a lot of community services around in the area. So I'm really just focusing on giving back to the community and helping young black artists, really be developed, really know what they're getting into once they get into the music industry. And the main thing is really keeping God first. So that's my focus, really ministering to the youth and make sure they're on the right path. Well, you can expect, I'm currently working on my next album, and so it's going to be awesome, so get ready, stay tuned for it. We're thinking about doing a lot of different kind of songs on there to reach a different caliber of people, but that's my plans for now. I'm working on a new album, so I just say just stay tuned because it's going to be awesome.
My Bible tells me
yes, it does.
that He would never leave it,
Never leave.
nor forsake me.
Not forsaken, no.
Just call upon the name of Jesus.
He hasn't left me.
I'm being transformed.
Transformed.
With the renewing of my mind.
Said,
Yeah.
He hasn't. And he's never gonna leave.
Again, I'm Coco McMillan, and thank you for taking the time to watch my EPK. Thank you.
All right, folks, that was a little bit about Coco McMillan. Like I said, we get to hear her every Thursday at 6 p.m. She's got some great comments and some great things that go on in her life on a regular basis. And of course, she's always glad to share tremendous people that she is associated with as well. So definitely always great to have Coco on the show and to have her sharing her knowledge and the things that she's got going on in her life as well. So always truly fascinating, truly amazing young lady who's got some great things going on in her world. And we're glad to call her one of our friends and somebody that we're always glad to have involved in this network and in sharing some very important stories and all of that. So always glad to have her share her wisdom, her knowledge, and what she's got going on in her world. And I do know that we're going to her will be on next week, or she will be on. I said that totally incorrectly, grammatically speaking, and all of that. But yeah, I can even laugh at myself in that regard. Even though I'm a journalist, I can even make mistakes as well. But that being said, she's got some great guests. And I think the next couple of weeks we might be airing some reruns, but you may have not seen those episodes, and you will learn a lot about some of her friends and some of the people that she is involved with in that regards. And don't forget that coming up in next week on Monday, actually about less than a week from now, we'll be having the Black Business Olympics, the fall 2021 edition, and all of that. So that'll be coming your way very shortly, and hopefully folks will be paying attention and joining in that conversation as well. So that should be truly amazing, and we look forward to hearing people share a lot of their knowledge from the business community, and that'll be from the 15th to the 21st. So it'll start on Monday the 15th at 8 a.m. and it'll be 24 hours, 7 days, and that should be a truly fun thing going on in that regard. So that being said, I hope that y'all will join us on that particular day and share a lot about what you've got going on in your world. Maybe you can even be one of the folks that is making comments if you're not already a guest on that particular week-long event. But definitely we want people to engage in the conversation and say what they've got going on in their life. So always glad to have people share their knowledge, share what they've got going on in their world and all of that. But definitely some great things being shared. And I did say that we have incorporated our talent part of things as well. So if you've got a tape that you like to share, whether it's a comedy routine, whether it's maybe your singing voice or something that you want to share, we're going to try to encourage people to be sending in their talent so that we can share it with our audience and all of that. So we will be having the talent component, and I'm hoping that more people will share their talent. It can be you reciting a poem. It can be you telling a narrative. Maybe you want to recite either a novel that really resonates with you. Maybe it's a novel that really is something that you use to get your own method and message out and everything. So if you are willing to share that, then we would love to have you do that. So it can be like the works of Maya Angelou, or maybe somebody like Ralph Ellison, or maybe somebody along the lines of Hemingway, or maybe you got some original work that you would like to share as well. And of course, we'd love to hear singers, poets, and others share their message as well. So if you've got some thoughts in that regard, we would love for you to share them with us, and definitely let us know your thoughts on a number of these things going on in that regard. So definitely let us know what your thoughts are, and if you've got some dreams and some aspirations of talent that you would like to share, we would love to hear from you. We would love for you to share your message of hope and your message of talent as well, because we know that we've all got a talent of one sort or another. Like I said, I never would have thought that I would have been a voice actor, but now I've done it a couple of times, because I've not just been the voice actor with the Funky Eye Puppets, but I've also done some reciting for some academic people as well, where I was reciting some of the tests kind of things that were going on, so that folks that might not be able to see the test could at least know what it was going on in that regard. So that is something that I have been involved in, and I've done it now for a couple of online universities as well as for a major testing company. And now I can add voice actor with my skills as a Funky Eye Puppet to what I do as well. So it's always great to develop new skills and to share the skills with the world as you develop them. So that being said, I said we are going to have at least three, and the other one, I'm just going to give you a clue right now. On next week, I'm going to reveal all three of the people that I am talking about. One of them, I will give you the clues next week as well. I will tell you that this person is actually out of the world of classical music. That narrows the field down big time. So I'm going to find some information about this particular person. I won't tell you who it is. Maybe it's a well-known person. Maybe it's not. We'll let you know as we put the clues out there next week. But right now, we're going to give you the clues for the two this week, and then next week, I will reveal the person. If you know the answer, don't hesitate to get in touch with me at bluesradio@gmail.com. That's bluesradio@gmail.com. Tell me that you know the answers, and I will definitely be glad that somebody has won. So far, we've had people in the show that have won, but nobody in the audience has won as of yet, and I would like to change that. So I'm actually giving y'all some fairly easy people this time around. So this particular person said that high school dropouts are forfeiting their opportunity to pursue the American dream. That's what they said. High school dropouts are forfeiting their opportunity to pursue the American dream. They also said great players are willing to give up their own personal achievements for the achievement of the group. It enhances everybody. And that is something that a lot of folks need to be thinking about when they're doing these group projects and all of that. They also said, I tell kids to pursue their basketball dreams, but I tell them to not let that be their only dream. And that is some great advice that was given in that regards as well. And they also said a lot of young players don't really know much about the history of the game, and a lot of them are missing out on what the game is all about, especially the whole concept of sportsmanship and teamwork. That is a very powerful quote, and one that we need to keep in our minds on a number of levels. They also said you can't win if you don't play as a unit. You can't win if you don't play as a unit. And another thing that they said was one man can be a crucial ingredient on a team, but one man cannot make a team. So that is a very powerful quote and all of that. And they also said in a similar kind of a line, they said that you can't win unless you learn how to lose. You can't win unless you learn how to lose. And they have also said that they have this going on in their history. So they didn't say it, but this is something that got their career NBA records include the most field goals made, 15,837. Most points, 38,387. By the way, those most field goals made I'm thinking it's not somebody like Shaquille O'Neal or some of the others that did not have all that great of a luck with the free throw line or things along that line. But actually, they're talking about field goals, which is actually the made basket and not the free throws. But I'm thinking they did better in free throws as well than some of the people that I just mentioned. But who knows what they might have done? I'll have to find those statistics maybe for next week. And they also had the most minutes played. And this is a whole lot of minutes, 50,446. I'm going to have to put that into the calculation of how many days of the year or how many years that is added up in the minutes, because that sounds like a lot of time. And they won six. That's right. I said six NBA MVP awards, one in 1971, one in 1972, one in 1974, one in 1976, one in 1977, and one the year that I went to Marquette, 1980. So that is a little bit about their history in the NBA. They also won six NBA championships, one with the Milwaukee Bucks in 1971, and five times with the Los Angeles Lakers in 1980, 1982, 1985, 1987, and 1988. And after converting to Islam, he changed his name. And he was a member of three, count them, three UCLA Bruins national championship teams, 1967, 1968, and 1969. And he was known for his skyhook shot, which he developed as a response to the NCAA ban on the dunk shot. It is a difficult shot to defend as the ball is released at the top of the arc. So that is something that they said as well. And by the way, yours truly, and by the way, this is my Cash App if you want to make a donation to me and the great things that we're doing here in this area. This is my personal Cash App. So definitely, if you're interested in making a contribution, we will not argue with you in the least bit. As a matter of fact, we like to do positive things and we like to share it. It is $Mark Lee, 1962, the year of birth, and all of that. So if you want to make a donation, don't think that we'll argue because we won't. So just wanted to put that out there in case you wanted to make any donations in that sense and everything. And by the way, as we come back to the guest of the honor and everything along that line, I did want to mention something else about them as well, which is that y'all have heard me say about this particular person that I know somebody here in Durham, North Carolina, that has kept their horses. I think it was multiple horses, but it might only be one right now. But they have kept their horses, which I believe were racehorses or something along those lines. But yes, there is a gentleman from the Muslim community that I sometimes see on the bus, as we are bus acquaintances, and definitely a elderly gentleman that I have a great deal of respect for, that has kept this gentleman's horse and all of that. So that is another clue that you might want to think about if you go back and watch past episodes and all of that. So that might give you an idea of who we are talking about as well. So that is the basketball player. I did say that I might get different folks of different things. Don't forget that I'd like you to get, if possible, all three of the folks, and definitely I might even try to come up with some prizes as well. By the way, speaking of this person, they also appeared as a co-pilot, Roger Murdoch, in the parody film Airplane. And in 1983, fire destroyed their home in the Bel Air, Los Angeles, including a large collection of jazz records. And he founded a foundation, the Skyhook Foundation, to connect underprivileged youth with opportunities in science, technology, engineering, and math. And President Obama awarded him with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And in 2016, he spoke at the Democratic National Convention. So that wasn't that long ago. And he's auctioned off 234 items from his collection of memorabilia, including 4 of his 6 NBA championship rings. And the auction netted almost $3 million, which most of the proceeds going to his organization, Skyhook. And he recently, as this is Veterans Day, co-produced a documentary which was entitled Black Patriots, that focuses on the Black American heroes of the Revolutionary War. So that is something that they did as well. So that's one of our people. And like I said, we're hoping that you can get all three. Send an email to bluesradio@gmail.com, and hopefully you can figure out who it is that I am talking about in this regards and all of that. So the other person is actually from the world of feminism and the world of activism and things along that line. So I'm going to bring up some clues about them, and hopefully you can figure out who this is as well. They were a former political advisor to both Bill Clinton, President Bill Clinton, and Al Gore. And she rose to prominence with her 1991 book, The Beauty Myth, which established her as the leading voice of the third wave feminism movement. So that is a little bit about this particular person. She is also a journalist who's contributed articles to The Nation, The New Republic, The Guardian, and The Huffington Post on topics including abortion, Occupy Wall Street, which I was part of as well, and Edward Snowden. So that's some of the information about this particular person. Um, Her mother was the author of The Lesbian Community, and her father is a Romanian born Gothic horror scholar. So it definitely sounds like she's come from a world of academia and definitely a world of intelligentsia and all of that. She was previously married to journalist Dave Shipley, and the couple has two children together. And she was responsible for Al Gore's attempted alpha male makeover ahead of the 2000 presidential elections. And she was also arrested at an Occupy Wall Street event back in 2012. So less than 10 years ago is when that happened to her. And apparently, she believes that the skylines or the airplanes are polluting the New York City skylines. And there might be others that are thinking that same thing. And she also posts the skylines from other cities as she's traveling, including two from right here in North Carolina, Fayetteville and Cary, North Carolina, to point out the man made particulate in the air. So apparently she does this on Twitter and other places. And she was one of the leading voices of the feminist movement in the 90s and in the 2000s. And apparently she has argued that the fashion and the beauty industries have made an unattainable standard of beauty that is then used to psychologically and physically punish women for their failure to achieve it. She also had a book in 1993 that was entitled Fire with Fire, which deals with female empowerment and sexual liberation. In 1977, she had Promiscuities, which suggested teaching children masturbation and oral sex as alternatives to other kinds of intimacy and all of that. So that's one of the things that she said, apparently, and at least that's one of the things I found out about her. And she also had a book called Misconceptions, which discusses the modern assumptions and stigmas associated with childbirth. And apparently the New York Times Book Review lambasted her 2012 movie, which was had the title of A Female Anatomy Part, and they lambasted it for shoddy research. And speaking of accusations, she accused Harold Bloom, her professor at Yale, of sexual encroachment back in 2004, but the university did not act on this particular person's claim. And she received a Bachelor of Arts degree in the year that I graduated, but hers was in English literature from Yale University, and that was in 1984. I'm thinking that she might have been a graduate in a standard summer or May graduation, whereas I was a December graduate. But who knows? Maybe she was a December graduate as well. Then she went on to become a Rhodes Scholar at New College in Oxford. And this was an interesting fact that I found out. Her birthday is in 2 days when she will turn 59. So apparently she's in that fellow Scorpio range of my younger brother and all of that. And she also wrote a book in 2007 called The End of America, Letter of Warning to a Young Patriot. So that is some of the things that is about her and all of that. And she also had some books that folks were not finding all of that great in terms of its evidence and things of that nature. It was a book called Outrages, Sex, Censorship, and the Criminalization of Love, which she said was going to delve into evidence she found of several dozen executions of men convicted of sodomy in Britain. But apparently there's some questions as to how much research was done and whether it was good research. And then she has some interesting quotes. She said, "Women who love themselves are threatening, but men who love real women more so." And she also said, "A culture fixated on female thinness is not an obsession about female beauty, but an obsession about female obedience." And she also said that beauty is a currency system like the gold standard. Like any economy, it is determined by politics. And in the modern age, in the West, is the last best belief system that keeps male dominance intact. So that's one of the things that she said in that regards. She also had something to say about the press, because she said the press doesn't stop publishing, by the way, in a fascist escalation. It simply watches what it says. That too can be an incremental process, and the pace at which the free press polices itself depends on how journalists are targeted. So that's what they said in that regards. And they also said this about obstacles. They said obstacles, of course, are developmentally necessary. They teach kids strategy, patience, critical thinking, resilience, and resourcefulness. So they were saying that that is a positive thing when we have obstacles in our life. And they were also saying that what, after all, is the narrative of the American dream? It was a discourse formulated between the 1880s and the 1920s in the United States during the great wave of migration and expansion and reforms of the progressive era. So that's what they were saying. And I know that even some of my friends here on this network have argued as to what is the definition of progressiveness. And, in some places it might be considered as liberal, in some places it might be considered as progressive. So it's one of those, or conservative. That's one of those terms that can have double meanings and double styles of thought as to what it means to you. And last but not least, well, actually, I might have a few more. They said, in a fascist system, it's not the lies that count, but the muddying. When citizens can't tell real news from fake, they give up their demands for accountability bit by bit. And they also said, of course, a woman who decides to work full time as a mother in their home can be happy and deserves full respect from us. Motherhood is one of the most challenging and creative jobs anyone can do. And as part of that quote, they added, the goal is to remake the world so that our choices are not so stark. So they were saying that they would like to see a different kind of world in that regards. And they also said the end of America details the 10 steps that would-be dictators always take in seeking to close an open society. It argued that the Bush administration had been advancing each one. And then one of the quotes that they said was that after we were hit on September 11th, 2001, we were in a state of national shock. Less than 6 weeks later, on October 26, 2001, the U.S. Patriot Act was passed by a Congress that had little chance to debate it. Many said they scarcely had time to read it. And they said this about protests. They said that peaceful, lawful protests, if it is effective, is innately disruptive of business as usual. That is why it is effective. And definitely peaceful, lawful protest is something that I have believed in as well. And Western women have been controlled by ideals and stereotypes as much as by material constraints. And then they said to ask a woman to become unnaturally thin is to ask them to relinquish their sexuality. So they were saying that some of these things are not things that we should be doing in society. And they also said this about us men folks. They said, I don't think most men do hate women at all. I think most men are trying their best and facing acculturation into masculine behavior that forces them to deny their own humanity and to exaggerate distance from the world of women. So that is what they said in that regards. So that's our two mystery guests. And like I said, next week, I will reveal who they are. And hopefully y'all will be able to share your thoughts about who the mystery guests are. So like I said, you've got two to try to figure out between now and next Wednesday. And then one that will come out of the world of classical music. And I may even drop some ideas to them as well. So definitely have to have this great conversation and look forward to some amazing conversations around some of these things that are being said and all of that. So definitely, if you've got any thoughts, then we would love to have your thoughts in that regard as well. So definitely always an amazing thing to happen, and glad to have these amazing conversations with you, our listeners, and all of that. So definitely, if you are interested in appearing on this show, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always on Clubhouse looking for guests, also on things like Podcast and LinkedIn and other places, but always glad to have engaging and interesting conversation with my guests here on this platform. So if you've got some things that you would like to share, we would love to have you as a guest as well. So just keep that in mind, and hopefully we will get you coming here in the very near future to share some of your thoughts as well. So that being said, I'm going to bring up maybe a couple of more spots of things going on, maybe even some music as well, and then we'll get ready to get out of here very shortly. But we do hope that y'all will join us in these various conversations and that you will have a fun time in these amazing rooms and all of that. But on that note, we're going to give you a little bit of music. It's actually from a past guest, and all of that. So I'm going to drop off and let y'all hear first a poem because it's a poem that we love playing all the time, and then we're going to let you hear a bit of music as well. But
the difference between thinking and doing and living in the 21st century. They teach us about being a real quarterback-oriented games. We don't have to just use video games and live in the shadows of good things because of them. We grow up with agility far larger and bigger than we are tall. Parents are the champions and have to be our first life coaches and know-it-alls. Who knows how this came to be? Coaches will ask you if you know your right foot from your left, if you know yourself, if you act knowingly good or bad, if you can move and negotiate a field with style and form, if you can tackle or throw a pass, or if your last name is that of a clown. If you can let someone know on the team that you are in trouble before you cause yourself or someone else trouble. If you are ready to learn teamwork or aware that you started out today with your pants down or your sportsmanship was left on the kitchen table, if you know the social studies, the alphabets, science, music, characters, and the stats and the numbers of a great student player eligible to stay on the team, and if you know the poise of great athletic champions and their scientific attitudes that are historical or music to us now, if you have the swag of the game, the discipline, the performance, and artistic form down pat, and if you have the style of gymnastics that the sport has with life, if you have the work ethic and determination to make it all seem easy and not a game at all, if you have the knowledge of all the above, or you don't know things like this even make the difference. I think that when it comes to the importance of parents and their field and self-knowledge, wisdom, virtues, and courage, their teachings, love, respect, care that they illustrate on the field and in the grind of life with their actions and their ideas, experiences, muscle, and strategic magic and skills wrapped around us with their priceless love. For their verbs to be that make us winners in this hard and fast third century that without them, kids and adults, athletes could hardly see or do anything at all. Parents teach us the difference between playing video games and playing on the field. Parents teach us how to be champions. A huge hug should go to parents, coaches, and parent-like community people who have love on the field for you and who are champions for your life, both in and out the games.
definitely appreciate that. A great poem that was recited in that particular situation and everything. And my good friend Calvin Anderson, I believe, wrote that piece, but he had his friend narrated and all of that. So always great to have some amazing guests. And, you know, sometimes I find my guests from friends of mine. So Stacey G had told me about this next amazing guest, which is a poet, I believe, out of the West Coast, but we're going to find out if I'm correct in that regards and everything. And that being none other than Vision Poet. And I've heard great things about Vision Poet and all of that. So looking forward to this amazing conversation and all of that. So definitely some great conversation being had and looking forward to learning more about Vision Poet and what the Vision Poet is all about. So how are you doing, Vision? Like I said, it's a great to see you here and everything. Got to get off that clue that I had on from the talk show that I do and everything, because there's actually a part of the show that is a talent competition or a kind of like a trivia quiz. So that's actually where that reform of
Word.
era came back and all of that. But definitely, I was given clues of a feminist as well as a person in the sports world, and hopefully, the folks will get the answers since I think that they're fairly well. The feminist may not be all that obvious, but the sports person I think was fairly obvious and everything. But we'll find out if folks have a whole week to figure it out and if they can figure out who that particular sports person was. But Stacey had told me about you and how amazing you are there on Clubhouse and some of the other places. And I was just like so glad to finally be able to get you on here and to share your story and what you're all about, because it is definitely great to see you and meet you through my friend Stacy, and looking forward to learn more about you. Am I correct in thinking that you, like her, are in the West Coast, or is that a mistake on my part? Because I forgot which part of the world you're in, but I do know that you're part of the spoken word community, and I am definitely have a lot of friends in that community here in Durham, North Carolina, because I've definitely got some friends that do the whole spoken word competition and things
Yeah.
along those lines, including my good friend Desan and a number of others here in North Carolina. But I just wanted to learn more about you, the amazing vision poet.
Now I'm happy to be here. I'm actually in Philly.
Okay.
I'm planning to move to LA for business, hopefully, God willing. But I'm born and raised Philly boy.
Cool. So, what got you into the whole spoken word community? Like I said, I know that Philly has this tremendous spoken word community, as does New York. Like I said, I definitely know about the New Eurekan poets. I know about a
Yeah.
couple of the other ones that are based there in New York and all of that. So, were you the one that was always involved in the spoken word and were always spitting rhymes, or is this something that you developed later in life?
I was always a writer. Like my mom had me reading and writing at a very young age, but I wrote like I would write. I was the poet who was like I was like a corner boy, and I would go home and like hide under the sheets with my little journal and write things and hide it so nobody would know that what I was doing. But Philly is a very artistic city, and I remember the first time I heard a brother by the name of Saul Williams. And the first time I heard him, I was like, wait a minute, we're allowed to do this? Like I had never heard anybody write like that or flow like that before. I thought poetry was what I learned in school. And as soon as I heard Saul Williams, I will never rhyme on track. Like I was like, wait a minute, I felt free. I felt like unshackled. I can write how I want to write. I can do what I want to do. And being in Philly at the time was the neo soul movement. And I wasn't like them. I loved it. I loved music and Jill and Kench. I loved all. I still love all of them, and I'm friends with some of them. But that wasn't me. I was hip hop, so I felt like I was never gonna like be the sing song kind of like Flo and Erica, like the flowetry or India Irie style. When I heard Saul, I was like, this is like a mesh of what I want to do in the hip hop that I love. And from then I just been writing. I just been touring the world and doing my thing.
It's interesting you mentioned Saul, because a lot of times when they're doing those slam poetry competitions, they actually give honor to Saul and even some of the ways that he created the whole slam poetry movement and everything. So they definitely give him his due for
Definitely.
his being kind of one of the founding fathers of the whole slam poetry scene. So definitely they give him his due respect, including some of the sayings that they have in terms of the way that they let you know whether you're good or bad in the poetry circuit and everything, because it can definitely get a little bit interesting in the way that they let you know what's going on, but it's done in a fun kind of fashion.
Yeah,
And
it's all love. It's all love, and for the most part, it's all love. It can be a little competitive. I coach slam. I used to slam back in the day. I don't really do it anymore, but I was the head coach for the Philadelphia youth poetry team that competed at Brave New Voices. We won the international championship a couple times, and I like teaching it as a form of expression. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having like some competition, because competition can bring out the best in us, but it can also bring out the worst. So it's trying to find that balance of teaching to be competitive, but also using that as a conduit to help young people find their voices.
no, I definitely agree. You got to have that conduit for them to find their voices. And I know one of the things that I love about slam poetry is a lot of times it would be young people that would be telling their truth, so whether it was
Yeah,
truth around what they were dealing with, maybe with abuse or with their
absolutely.
family situations or with even racial relations, whether that was in the corporate world or even in the school world. But
Yeah.
I've heard some very powerful poems that have dealt with a lot of very touching issues. And I was just wondering, as a past coach, how did you try to encourage your students to get involved in sharing their truths, whatever that truth is?
I think number one, displaying it. Like I never gave any of my students, or my team, like my team members, a prompt that I didn't already write on. I
Right.
was never gonna be that person that be like, hey, I need you, like write on this or go in or talk about this. So don't be afraid to write about or expose. Be vulnerable. And that's how I am now. Like even now that I've transitioned from poetry into script writing and animating, even those stories are very vulnerable. So just doing that, putting myself out there, I feel like that not only encourages but gives permission for other people to do that as well, especially young men, because I'm 6'7", 300 pounds, and if I can go on stage and talk about these very very sensitive topics, to me, I feel like that may inspire and give permission to other young men to do the same. Like, wait a minute, that doesn't make him a punk if he's doing this. I want to do that too. So I've always tried to lead by example.
Now you got to lead by example. There's no doubt about that. And speaking of leading by example, and you mentioned it earlier, you're there in that Philadelphia area, and of course, not just the poetry scene, but y'all also have had a tremendous music community. I'm actually a
Absolutely.
fan of TSOP and that
Mhm.
sound, but even in some of the musical styles that I love, like jazz and blues, y'all
Mhm.
have had some forefathers in that realm as well. So I was just wondering, how important has the music world been to you, and do you incorporate any of that into your own performances, whether that's in the scripts or whether that's in your poetry? So I'd love to hear your thoughts about the importance of that TSOP sound and just the Philly sound in general.
I don't think, like, almost everybody I know does some kind of art. Art is just who we are in Philly. Whether you're a musician or a singer or a writer, everybody does a graph. Everybody does something in Philly, and I think we are very musical people here. Like that's in who we are. Like we understand that it's not a burden, it's a gift to be part of such a legacy, and we take that very seriously here. So if you step on stage, to bring it, because we are standing on some wide shoulders. Whether it's like you said, whether it's like Coltrane lived here, whether we're
Right.
talking Gamble and Huff, whether we're talking the neo soul movement, whether we're talking the hip hop, Beanie Siegel and the Roots. Like, we understand that it's a legacy that we're upholding. And I've been to places. I was at this spot in Detroit called the Key Club, and nobody had ever heard of me. Nobody knew me. A friend had brought me up, and the guy was like, "Where you from?" And I was like, "I'm from Philly." He was like, "Oh, I know you dope." That's a pressure, but it's also like a beautiful thing. Like, yo, like people look at us in a light. Like, I know you're gonna bring it, and we have to uphold that. So when you're writing, for me, it's the rhythm of it. Sometimes I'm being inspired by a Black Thought or a Jill, like just hearing how like vulnerable they are in their writing. And it's like, yo, I have to uphold this. I can't be short in this. And it plays its part in my writing and scripts now in my animated series, because number one, music is a huge part of it. Like, music is a huge part. Like all my stories take place in the late 90s and early 2000s. So displaying what was going on during that time, whether I'm playing the Roots, whether I'm playing music or Kendrick the Family Soul, or it's some ratchet stuff with Beanie Siegel or the State Property. It's a huge part of who we are, and that's how my memory works. My mind works in music. So I remember when I hear a song, I know exactly what I was doing in that moment. I know exactly where I was, and I didn't even know how my mindset was at that time. So music here is so embedded in us that we literally can't escape it. It has to do with like everything we do is music related, and it's a beautiful thing. And shout out to Kenny Gamble, to Leon Huff, and thank you more than anything. Thank you.
And you talk about that legacy of Philly. Philly has some other legacies as well, and I'm also a definitely enjoy talking about it and talking about its part of what Philly is all about, and that is the sports legacy. Whether you're talking
Yeah,
about the 76ers, I actually went to school at Marquette, so I know Doc
yeah,
Rivers to some
yeah.
degree is y'all's coaching. Of course, y'all are going through
Hmm.
the whole Ben Simmons drama and everything, but I also remember
Yeah,
things that were going on with Dr. J, who is a lot of people's hero in the sports world, and there have been other players that have been there in Philly, not just in the basketball world, but I would also argue football with the Eagles, and even
yeah,
y'all's hockey team, and a number of
definitely.
other things. So, and then the other part of y'all's legacy is politics, because I do remember the whole incident with Move and
Move. Yep.
things along those lines, and
Hmm.
even like with the mayor that was up there at that time and everything, both the African American mayor as well as I believe Rizzo was up there at one
Yeah,
point
Rizzo.
as well.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, how important is that to what you write about and how your own development is? Because when I think of Philly, I definitely think of your political legacy, but also your sports legacy as well.
I think with regards to the political legacy, I know like I was working with some Gen Z kids, some late millennial and Gen Z kids, and they know that they in Philly, we don't learn this in our schools. We're not learning about what happened in Move in 1985. They're not talking about that. So it's our job as the young adults and now the middle-aged adults to pass that down, to not let that go. And our kids were writing about those things. Our kids are writing about the 39th district scandal and all these things that are very, very Philly, because we want to make sure we're putting our stories out to the world. We live in the shadow of New York, 90 miles to the north. DC is 2.5 hours south. So we always are making sure that whoa, don't just be passing us by. We got something to say here. And I think that also plays out with sports, because all of our teams are very, very blue collar, rough, whether it's the Broad Street Bullies from the Flyers back in the day to the 93 Phillies with John Kruk being an overweight dude just spitting all over the place. And now with the like you said, Doc to Barkley to Iverson, like these like blue collar dudes just grab your lunch pail and go to work. Like we embrace that. And I think that's what Ben Simmons is kind of getting wrong right now. It's like, dude, if you embrace this city, if you bust your hump, people are gonna love you. You ain't even gotta win it all. Iverson never won it all. He never won it. But he is such a huge person because he gave everything. And that's all people want to see here. So like Ben don't have to develop a three-pointer. It's cool. Go hard. That's all we care about. Go to work, put in everything. And when you see that with artists, like with our art, like comedians, somebody who won't give up, they bomb, but they back next month. You're like, I like this guy. Yeah. I want to support this guy. The poet who you see them he's getting better and better and better. You want to support them because he's working hard. This is such a blue collar city, and like that's something else we can't escape. So if you work hard and you embrace the culture will never let you down. They're gonna love you until the day you die and beyond.
I could definitely see that with that Philly attitude. I know that one of my brother's best friends is actually of a Puerto Rican descent and everything, but he has that same kind of Philadelphia blue collar kind of mentality and everything. And his daughter is actually an up and coming spoken word poet here in North Carolina and everything. So she's been part of that culture, spending time with people like Pierce Freelon, and I think she might have even done some work with Ninth Wonder and a couple of others, but she's definitely followed in that tradition. And then I know some people that were affiliated that live down here with Sister Sledge, which is also part of y'all's legacy as well. So definitely that Philly vibe can even migrate down south and bring some of that blue collar mentality. One of the things that you just said that really resonated with me and actually resonates with something that this network has talked about a lot, which is our education system. And it does seem like a lot of our educators are not teaching enough of our past history, whether that's the impact of the Black Panthers. We want to go out to the West Coast, or even like some of the things. There was a Malcolm X school here in Durham, North Carolina, and a couple of other things. And we do hit what I call the highlight moments of Black history. You know, the Martin Luther Kings, the Malcolm X, the Harriet Tubmans, even to some degree, the Sojourner Truth, even though I don't even know that her story is told as well as it should be, and all of that. But I was just wondering your thoughts as one is in that educational lane as to how we're doing in terms of teaching history. Because I know some people even complain about what they call CRT because they're feeling that maybe we're taking it too far and things along those lines. But I was just wondering your thoughts as to whether we're even teaching enough. Because I think sometimes the things that we need to be teaching, even in the arts, can help our kids learn about critical thinking. And I'm loving what you're doing by having those kids learn about moments that, shucks, they might not have even been born when those
weren't. Yeah, they definitely were not. Like this was, which is odd to me because I have like there was kids in my. It was really weird to me to when I was first like going heavy teaching poetry with the organization, that it was people that in our org that weren't born when Pac were alive, and then it was like, wait a minute, you weren't even alive when 9/11 happened. Like it's really like we age, so it happens really, really fast. But with regards to your question, I think it's our job. Like I worked in the classroom for the longest, and I taught history. And I remember reading going to college and reading unlearning all the things that I learned, all the BS that I learned in high school. That all these people that Columbus was this and these Vasco da Gama was that. And it's like, wait a minute, what? Like I was taught that's not what I was taught. And unlearning that, I had to step away because I was being asked to do the same thing with this next generation. And I didn't want students to be mad at me like I was mad at my history teachers. Like when I was trying to like sway away from that, I was getting crazy pushback from the administration. So I stepped out and I was able to do this in a different way. I think you bring up a great point. In history, it's like Black Americans existed during slavery, during Reconstruction, during the Harlem Renaissance, during the Civil Rights Movement, and that's it. Like it was nowhere else in history. So trying to, number one, we're at a point now where we go in our pocket, we have an encyclopedia. You ain't got to use the Dewey Decimal System no more. You all the research you want right in your pocket, and it's a beautiful thing. But that has to be structured. So helping kids see broadly and see themselves. And as an artist, I think that's part of our jobs. And it's always happened. The artists have always told the story, whether it's Langston, whether it's the painters, we've always been the ones who had to tell the additional education. So I think it's important. I think the critical race theory thing is really interesting because critical race theory isn't really even being taught to folks on a bachelor level. You really got to get into your master's and PhD to start learning CRT. So I think that's a straw man argument. I think it's the boogeyman to a lot of folks in Middle America, which is messed up. But if we're finally balancing things, why are folks so scared? If we're finally doing this, it doesn't say that every white person was bad. Nah, like it doesn't say that. It's just balancing and adding more to this mosaic that we have. It's not just this book. This is a huge mosaic. This is a gumbo. Why are we so afraid to add more ingredients? Why are you like? What are you afraid of? So, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree. What are they afraid of? And I don't get it and everything. But one of the things you were bringing up, and I was gonna see if you had any thoughts about this, is sometimes we also get into this whole divide and conquer background. And I don't remember whether Stacey told me your ethnic background or not, but definitely I know that a lot of times, we'll have these conversations even now with what's going on in the world, where people get upset at maybe the Asian population because they don't understand their language or what they might be saying or things along that line. And then we've got division between orientations, or maybe pitting the Native American against the Latin American, the African American against the person that might be coming from Peru or different other parts of the world and everything. And a lot of times they also try to put us in this like overarching kind of view, like all African Americans gonna think the same or come from the same kind of environment, whereas we know that some of them might be from rural parts of North Carolina, and some of them might be like from urban areas like Philly and New York, and the same with even the Latin American population, because just because you're in the whole Latin American population, a Peruvian is not going to necessarily think the same way as a Colombian. A Mexican is not necessarily going to think the same way as somebody from Bolivia, and things along those lines. But sometimes we try to make them all seem as if it's going to fit in one box. But I was wondering your thoughts about that.
I think we don't have a grip on the people that we idolize as much as we think we do.
Right.
Because if we know better, we know that Malcolm talked about Palestine before he passed.
Yeah.
Huey P. Newton went to Palestine and was like, hey, this is also our struggle. It became a global thing. They understood that the root was white supremacy, which also affects poor white people in Middle America and these coal mining. I understand this is bigger than this. The fact that Huey P. talked about the women's liberation movement, like, hey, we need to be on board with this, because if they not free, we not free. Right. Huey P. talked about the gay rights movement. So we talk about, and with the same idea, like, wait a minute, they may actually be the most revolutionary right now. You know what I mean? Like, so what are we talking about here? Like, we idolize, we canonize people, but we don't show the entirety of them, including their growth, including their evolution. So I totally think it's divide and conquer in a lot of ways. We feel very isolated. I know I was in Palestine in 2018 and was well received, and I saw a mural of Tamir Rice in Bethlehem.
Wow.
Like Tamir Rice in Bethlehem. So that they understand that it's big. They understand that, wait a minute, the problems that they're going through is directly related to the problems that we're going through, is directly related to what happened with apartheid in South Africa, which is directly related to women's lib or gay rights. Like, it's all the same thing holding us down. And while we're fighting for the scraps, it's flourishing. So I've always found that very, very interesting, specifically learning that the Black Panthers wasn't just like they were feeding the people and they were Black power, but they also knew that it was something greater. And that if I can help you fight and you help me fight, we win.
No, you got a good point there. And a lot of times people even forget that some of the programs that we complain about, including the programs around WIC and some of the things dealing with giving our people that are in the poverty situations food and things along those lines, were actually created by the Black Panthers, and then the government kind of like borrowed the idea and stole the idea and all of that. Because even like I said, even though he would never admit it if he was living, I'm thinking that Reagan got some of those ideas directly from the Black Panthers, and he just kind of like rolled with it and the things along those lines. But another thing that frustrates me, and you just mentioned it earlier, is that when our youngsters wear the shirts of people that they idolize without even bothering to do research as to who they are wearing the shirts of. Like I said, we've got a number of folks that might be walking around wearing Malcolm X shirts, or even the great Latin American revolutionary Che Guevara. But if you ask them who Malcolm X is or Che Guevara, they couldn't tell you. They couldn't tell you anything that they were involved in or anything along those lines. So I think that that's a failure of our education system as well. But I'd love to hear whether you agree or what your thoughts are about that.
I totally agree. And I think that's also a problem with canonizing folks, because you can't talk about Malcolm without talking about Detroit Red. Right. That helped him become who he was. His time in Harlem, his time being a hustler, a pimp, a thief, that helped him evolve. And that makes him that much better. And that means that I can connect to you on a different level, because if we look at Malcolm, we see the saint. We look at Dr. King, we see the saint, and we stop seeing their humanity. And if we don't see their humanity, that means we can't attain it. Right. If we look at them as this canonized saint, we can never attain that. I'm a dude from North Philly. I can't be like him. But he was Detroit Red. Che Guevara was born into almost privilege in Buenos Aires, and changed because of the motorcycle diary, changed because he's seen the poverty of the native population, just trying to travel the country and get laid with his homie, which changed him. And that means like, hey, we can be one way and change. And that's okay. And in fact, that's human. And in fact, that's been done forever. So that's the danger of just seeing these people as just an image on a shirt and just running with it and it being cool. And it's great. Like, if you're going to bring awareness to it, awesome, but also understand their accomplishments, but more than anything, their humanity.
Yeah, speaking of understanding their humanity, and you just kind of mentioned it with talking about Malcolm X and that Detroit Red period that he had and everything. I'm one of those people that believe that we don't give our, and I hate to use this term, but our underworld and our criminal element enough credit, because a lot of those are some of the smartest businessmen that I know. And it's just a matter of us maybe trying to get them to redirect their business direction, because maybe they don't need to be putting their lives in that danger, because definitely they're going up against the police and other forces that are out there. But in terms of their business knowledge, I would argue that some of them might be better business people than some of our MBAs in terms of actually knowing the ideas of how to run a business and things along those lines. But I don't know that we give them enough credit or even enough room to make that change the way that, say, Malcolm X did, because definitely whether it was Malcolm X, whether it was UAP Newton, whether it was Eldridge Cleaver, who might have gone a little bit too far on the other side with the Republicans and everything, but still they did make some very powerful changes in their lifestyle. And I don't know that we do enough of that. And I can even mention some people here in North Carolina that even went through the legal system. I know that my good friend that runs a thing called Polished Souls, Mike Anderson, he was actually, I want to say, up for a death penalty charge, but he's out and he's actually trying to help youth from around the country escape that world and everything. And my brother did not get involved in that actual criminal element, at least not as far as I'm aware, but he's definitely been doing some great work in terms of helping people get out of that lifestyle and even acknowledging some of the skill sets that they have that can help them in business. So I don't know enough about your own journey, but what are some of the lessons that you've learned? And would you agree that some of the people that we villainize, we actually probably need to find a way to make their skill sets work for the entirety of society and not just for the negative elements that might be out there?
I couldn't agree with you more. I think, again, I'm a corner boy. I'm from North Philly, 22nd and Lippincott. And if this was 2002 or 1996, I'd be on the corner right now with my homies who was selling drugs and doing this. And I remember sitting in a house one day. And again, because I'm tall, I was privileged. I played for Dynasty High School, which got me into college, which got me a degree, which sent me on a different path. And some of the stuff was also, decisions, but a lot of it was luck. I remember sitting in the house with a friend, and they were and this, like, I'm not glorifying, but they were measuring coke and they were cooking it up to make crack, and I'm like, this is chemistry. Like, this is like, they get the right mix and they get the right thing so that you get people to come. I'm like, y'all are marketing. I'm sitting there telling, like, this. I'm in school, like, you're literally doing what I'm learning in school right now in college. Like, you're doing the same thing, and even the way they were marketing. And again, I was fortunate. I'm blessed in a lot of ways. I'm privileged in a lot of ways because I'm tall, because my dad was around. My dad was a playground legend in basketball. So that sent me down a different path, and I made a little bit. But all my friends, we started in the same place. It might have been one different decision. None of us were like destined to be drug dealers or incarcerated or shooters or to be shot. We all were in the same place, playing on the same jungle gyms back in the day on the playground, the same people. And life, some of it is decisions, some of it is just like, hey, he didn't have the person in his life that I had. Yeah. He couldn't play ball, which kept him off the streets, which kept me in tournaments from Myrtle Beach to Alaska. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't have that. So I'm blessed to be able to see that. To see that, like, number one, to recognize my own privilege, but to see that I'm no different than them, except with the exception of a couple different decisions. Like, Hollywood will have you believing that these people were destined to be that way, and it's not like that. The news will have you believing that they're just this. They came out the womb a drug dealer, and it's like, that's not it. I teach poetry workshops in youth and Philly, it's called the Juvenile Justice Center, but also like adult prisons. And to see these brothers, you wouldn't, while we're in these rooms, there's no difference. The only difference when I'm allowed to leave, but while we sitting there writing poems and we talking about our experiences, there's no difference. It's just one or two decisions, bad decisions, or getting caught up, or, not being able to eat, or trying to feed your family. It can be a bunch of things, but these brothers are brilliant. These sisters are brilliant, and they're no different. In fact, they're better in a lot of ways. Like, if you writing poetry like I'm writing poetry, and I had classes, that means you better than me. I had a head start, and you running with me. You're better than me. So I think that's a brilliant point that we need to continue to talk. And again, then we start to see people's humanity. We're not looking at folks as just incarcerated. My friend has a shirt that says "No one is an inmate," and I've always believed that. I think it's brilliant because when we're all in the same room doing these workshops and chopping it up and talking, and when they come home, it's no difference. They just made one or two bad decisions, or life happened to them like differently than me, and that's it. And couple that with the crime bill and Reagan's tough on drugs and all these goofy things that now we're seeing 30, 40 years later, like, yo, that was some BS. That's it.
And speaking of that BS, I couldn't agree with you more, because I'm sitting there and I love to know your thoughts about this as one that spent that time there in Philadelphia, and definitely in that corner environment, what some people might call the hood and everything. But, whether it was Reagan's war on drugs, whether it was, I would even argue Biden and Kamala's war on drugs when she was out there in California, or even Trump's war on drugs, and a number of these other war on drugs, I have yet to see a brother from the hood have a plane. So how can you have a war on drugs if there are other powers that be that are actually the ones controlling the whole distribution point? So, we talk about supply chain and even what's going on now with the pandemic. And like I said, I'm not saying that there might not be one or two here that have a plane, but they're not the majority. So I'm thinking most of these drugs have to be coming from people that have a kind of access that me or you don't have, and things along those lines. And I can even bring it back to an issue that we were talking about on our news program that we do here Monday through Friday. And we were talking about the opioid crisis. And to me, that's no different than the crack crisis. It's just that most of the opioid victims were predominantly from white society. Yeah. So therefore, they're put into treatment programs, whereas most of the folks that were the brothers and sisters that were being busted for crack and things of that nature, they were going into the prison system. But what's the difference? You're both doing illegal drugs and all of that. But the only difference that I can figure out is a difference of race and class.
That's it. That's literally. I have a love-hate relationship with what's going on right now with the way that things are being treated, specifically the opioid crisis. I love the fact that it's finally being like addiction is finally being looked at as the mental health crisis that it is. But it makes me upset because my friend did 15 years on his first offense for a Fed charge. First offense, and again, he wasn't flying. No, he had a Suburban he bought at an auction. I was there when he bought it. His first offense, he did 15 years at Fort Dix. So I'm like, what is happening? So like, I'm glad we're decriminalizing it, but it needs to be some retroactive healing in some kind of way for these brothers and sisters who had to suffer through that. Like that's just not it wasn't okay. We were criminalized, we were brutalized in our communities, and then to find out later, and again, it's unlearning and learning again through Dark Alliance with Gary Webb's brilliant series with the the San Jose Mercury Times, and then Rick Ross comes and we find out that the Iran Contra thing, the CIA was indeed allowing the stuff to be sold in the hood so that they could fund a war where Congress didn't want to pay for it. So we had to suffer for that. There's no reparations for that. There's no apology for that. It's like, oh, we're not going to talk about that. But what we are going to do is, now that the opioid crisis is hitting coal country out in West Virginia and in Western PA and steel country, where all these plants have shut down and they're self-medicating, now we're going to treat it with the respect and the dignity it deserved, when it always deserved that. But it was black and brown folk and poor white folk, so it didn't matter. Criminal, throw them away. And on top of that, we're going to make some money off them for every night that they lay in this bed, we get a check for that. So it's like I have this love-hate relationship with the way that they're looking at the opioid crisis. It should be that way. But I hate that it hasn't always been that way. And at the end of the day, congratulations, drugs. Y'all won. You won the war on drugs. You won.
Yeah, they won the war on drugs.
You won. Drugs won.
Yeah, drugs won. There's no doubt about that and everything. But one of the things that I oftentimes get frustrated with is the way that our whole judicial system is structured. Because I'm actually one that believes that there needs to be, as we've been talking about, more actual, some people would call it rehabilitation, but actually getting people into a workforce after they go into the system, if they're going to go into the system in the first place. And I think there are a lot of crimes that folks don't need to be going to jail for. I know that one of the shows that airs actually earlier today, right before mine, is a show that my friend Jeff Eachin does called Weed Wednesday, where he's actually trying to get more and more people out of jails that are in there for the nonviolent offense of basically smoking, if not actually maybe selling some weed. And he's definitely had some tremendous success in getting some folks out, I think throughout the country, but definitely where he's based at, which is the West Coast and things along those lines. But I'm just sitting there going, like, a lot of the things that are going on in society also take place in the prison system. I mean, we've been talking a lot throughout the course of several months about the race relations and what's going on in that sense in greater America. But I mean, those same kind of divisions and even those same gangs, from what I understand, and like I said, I've been fortunate that I think I had one criminal experience, and that was like literally, I think, one day or maybe a half a day in a like a jail cell and everything. And then they had to do some, what do they call it? Rehabilitation kind of work, like work off something at a camp and everything along those lines. But that was my one attempt and one experience in that. I know others have had much more detailed attempts, but in talking to friends that have been through the system and actually gone through the whole 9 yards of it, they talk about everything from the Bloods and the Crips being in the prison to the Proud Boys and the the Nazi skinheads.
The Aryan Nation. That's a big thing, and I think who we are as a society is how we treat the least of us, or the people that we look at as the least of us. That's who you are ultimately as a society. I seen a quote on Twitter a while back that said the United States is a third world country wearing a Gucci belt. And I thought that was apropos. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I couldn't agree with you more with saying that we need, like, the reform that we needs to be with dignity. I read an article a while back. I don't remember whether it was Norway or Denmark, but it was in that area. But it might have been a Scandinavian country, and their prison system was beautiful. It was like books and TV, and they were getting a trade, and they were doing all kinds of therapy, and they were spending a lot of money doing that. And folks like, why would you do that? And the warden was like, because they have to go home and be our neighbor.
Right.
It was like, duh, like they have to go home. We want them to be a productive part of society once they leave here. This isn't supposed to be punitive for life. It's not supposed to be a life sentence. And that's what that becomes. And that's why it becomes this revolving door of folks going back, because they come home with the scarlet letter on their chest. Mm-hmm. They can't get a job. They don't have life is happening so fast with technology. My friend went away in 2002, came home 2017, and so much had happened since then. I had another friend who just did 27 years, and it's like so much has happened in that time. And it's like Brooks from from Shawshank Redemption, like looking around, like what the, like life has just happened so fast. So if we're not going to give them the skills that they need, if we're not going to give folks the counseling and the social programs and so that folks don't even need to go in, like what are we doing and why are we doing this? The cops aren't the answer to everything. We know that. Tough on crime doesn't work. It doesn't. The death penalty doesn't work. People are still going to murder. We need to actually get to the root of this. Why are people committing crimes? What is happening? And it doesn't say that there's going to be a Ted Bundy or a Gary Ridgway. That's going to happen in every country in the world. But for the folks who are non-violent, for the folks who've sold a little weed or sold some crack, and you're like, why? The why is what we're not getting at. It's just the what. You did that, mandatory minimum. You had that mandatory minimum. That hasn't worked. It never worked, and it's not going to work. That's why I'm happy to see district attorneys like Larry Krasner in Philadelphia who are decriminalizing so many things. You can't even pull somebody over in Philly for a minor traffic offense because that was turning into major things. You know what I mean? Like we're finally starting to get to a point very slowly where we're seeing progressive people in government saying this isn't working. Let's try something else.
I agree with you. And they're doing some innovative things. I know we've had some folks doing some innovative things here in North Carolina as well. And I really feel sorry for those. And I think we just had one in North Carolina not that long ago where you got folks that they find out that they didn't do the crime. And then they come out and they're like your friend that went through the system and they really have no idea. They might get some monetary reward, but a lot of times they've lost so much that you just kind of feel sorry for them because you're going like, you didn't even commit the crime, and then DNA or different other things find out that you're not the guilty party, but you've lost like 20 or 25 or 30 years of your life.
You can't pay me enough if I miss my mom's funeral for being in jail over something I ain't do.
Right.
You can't pay. There's no price tag you can put on that I missed all this time with like watching my kids grow up. You can't put a price tag on that. And I think that's we're seeing that so much more with DNA, with genetic, with the genetic, like they're doing like, the 23andMe finding the real people who did the stuff. Like we're seeing so much more of that. And that's why we're saying like the judicial system here is broken. It's been broken and now it's being exposed. Thankfully, because we have the little cameras in our pocket right now to be able to expose some things. So it hasn't worked. It's not going to work going forward if we don't change some things drastically. And the problem is so many people are hell bent on having it the old way because they make money off of it or they've made a career off of it. So unfortunately, some of these folks are going to have to just die off or retire off before we can start to see change on a grand scale. But it has to happen or we're going to go down as a society. We are how we treat our people.
No, and definitely what's he saying? We are how we treat the least of us. I think that's something that the Bible talks about and other people in the religious world talk about on a regular basis. And I even know, I've got relatives that are in the police force. I've got a cousin who's a GBI officer, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and I have friends that work here in the Durham police system. And even some of those will admit that they have to get rid of the bad apples, and they also wish that they were trained to do things that they are not trained to do. So I'm actually one of those people that think that we might actually have to bring people into situations, whether that's domestic violence or things to deal with those folks that are fighting maybe different mental illness or homeless situations that police were never trained to deal with, and I don't think should be trained. So I think that they probably need to have like maybe entire, I won't say like bring a whole gang of 10, but maybe like a gang of 3 or 4 that come to respond to these, because some of these incidents that they are responding to, they're not trained to deal with.
They're not trained to do. They're not trained for it. And like, there's a couple summers ago, there was a brother who had a mental breakdown, and he was walking up and down his street in West Philly with a knife. And his mom called the cops like, hey, called 911, like, hey, my son is having a mental breakdown. We need help. They didn't hurt anybody, but he had a knife. Now, if some social workers went out there who were trained to bring him down, who was understanding he was having a manic episode and went to school and understood all the things to get somebody to de-escalate, he may not have lost his life. Right. Cops went out there guns blazing because they're taught self. They're taught protect myself. They're taught get home to my family, so I ain't taking no chances with this brother. And they shot him and killed him. And his mom got to live with that for the rest of his life, that she called his executioners. When she called, now she didn't think he was going to die that day. She called 911 because that's supposed to be the help. But 911 should be able to assess, you know what, this isn't police. And maybe they should be in the background just in case. But we need some folks out here, that's their job.
Right.
That's not that cops don't. That's not their job. So this is something has to happen. It was again, we're seeing it slowly. I know in New York they have some things now they're dispatching social workers, and number one, it's cut down police shootings like crazy, but it's also like helping with incarceration, because the first thing isn't, hey, lock him up, or hey, shoot him, hey, lock her up, or hey, shoot her. So it's slowly starting to happen, but it needs to happen rapidly.
I definitely agree. It's got to happen more rapidly. You have to have more actions in that regards, and we're not seeing enough of that. There was an incident similar to that, I think, a few years ago in the heart of downtown. And you're right, a lot of times those incidents happen. And I remember even when I was dating a young lady in our state capital and everything, I remember waking up early in the morning because of the police responding to somebody that was, I think it was a domestic violence incident or something along those lines. And I just remember that they used what was supposed to be a softer method of bringing somebody down. They actually tased him, but what they did not realize was that he had some other underlying condition. So that actually took his life away from here. And like I said, hopefully people, I do think that you can have forms of restraint that are less lethal than the guns and everything, but even those that are supposed to be less lethal, like the taser, can also take a life if you're not aware of all the things that the person is going through and everything. I just remember, like I said, literally waking up in the morning when I was staying with that particular person and seeing like the whole sheet over the body and everything, and hearing the story, and I'm like, that was just devastating to just be a witness to it. And I was actually a witness after the fact.
Yeah, that's traumatic. And imagine, like, I think the difference now, like, I feel bad for the young people, because I grew up during the time of the 39th district scandal. I lived in the 39th district in Philly, and it was these rogue cops that were like beating up drug dealers, taking their drugs and selling it across town. And it was a big thing. And I grew up witnessing this. So I grew up with a very innate distrust of the police. Mm-hmm. And now these kids are seeing, like, not only living their lived experience, and like you said, you rolled up on that, after the fact, so that was very real to you, saw with your own eyes, but now they're scrolling and they're seeing it. Right. They're living out trauma that's happening. They're in Detroit and they're living out trauma in Oakland. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel bad for this young generation, and we got to do better as adults, and we have to want change and not stick to the old ways just because it's what we knew. It's like, that's not okay. We're traumatizing generations. They're not going to trust adults going forward.
No, I agree. And you mentioned trauma, and I was actually, a friend of mine does a show around funk music and things of that nature on a different network, and it used to be part of this network, but he was sharing a little bit about the like culture, and I've also brought it up here as well, because so many of our kids are so caught up in social media that they want to be liked, they want to be approved, and things of that nature. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about how our young people, like you said, have access to social media and can find out about something that took place in Pakistan or in Belarus like yesterday, or even like within a minute of it happening and everything, but they're also constantly trying to be finding that approval, whatever that approval is to them, and the things along those lines. Like I said, I know that you're on Instagram, and I think that you're also on Clubhouse, if I remember correctly. I love those apps, but I also sometimes see some discussions going on that can be, I won't say harmful, but they can also be very toxic, for lack of a better term, and things of that nature. And I don't know that our youth are able to filter as well as us adults are. And sometimes even us adults aren't able to filter as much as we would like, because I've heard whole discussions back and forth on one side or another of the vaccination argument, and then on the other side. And sometimes those can be very enlightening, but they can also sometimes be very confrontational.
Definitely. I think with social media, I love social media for a lot of things. Again, I was able to create something that that now has a humongous volume. Just something in my brain I wanted to create, to tell. So I was telling stories on social media that rolled into me teaching myself how to animate, and now it has a humongous following from here to Nigeria, and that's great. So we were able to entertain ourselves during the pandemic, like during the crazy days of the pandemic. We were able to connect and stay connected. We were able to organize. I don't know that we would have ever even known about Trayvon if it wasn't for Twitter. I don't know that we've even known about Sandra Bland and Tamir Rice if it wasn't for Twitter. Like, we're able to organize in these ways, and that's great. But then there's the flip side of it, the need for validation, the vanity, the narcissism of it, where we don't feel wanted. And we know the woman, I forget her name, so forgive me if she sees this. The woman, like the young woman who worked for Facebook, and she went to Congress talking about, hey, Facebook knows that this is detrimental to young women. They have the studies to say that, hey, this is affecting young women's self-esteem. They know that this is causing people to self-harm. They know this, and they're not doing anything about it because they're making so much money with ads. So I'm torn on it. I see how it creates vanity. I see how if you put up a post and it's not, and it doesn't get 25 likes, then now it's like, oh my God, like I'm not pretty. And I also see that it gives people really bad expectations. They're looking at something that's been face tuned in Photoshop, saying, oh my God, that woman's perfect, or oh my God, that guy's body is great. That's not even real. Right. You feel like a failure because you don't have the Mercedes or you don't have the condo. That was rented. I know this dude. I ain't gonna say his name, but he's from Philly. He always taking pictures in a private jet. His girlfriend works, his wife now works at the airport where the private jet goes, and he just goes and takes pictures and leaves. But everybody thinks he's this jet-setting guy. So people are feeling like they're failures because, oh my God, how did he get this and I didn't? What is he doing that I'm not doing? I need to work harder. Nah, it's fake. It's so fake. And we're trying to live, we're contorting ourselves to fit into these boxes of femininity or masculinity or whatever it is. And it's fake. We can't, we literally, we're chasing phantoms. So I love some of it, but some of it is so toxic, and we've gone way too far down the other road.
Now, you brought up an interesting topic. I know it's one of the topics that you love talking about and everything. And I have seen certain cultures that definitely have toxic masculinity, whether that's in our own African American cultures, and definitely there are certain, not saying all, but certain Latin American cultures that almost seem to breed that kind of masculinity and everything. But I'm just wondering your thoughts about that and how we can actually dismantle it. Because I do think that even in some of our media coverages, Chuck, I remember watching Renegade, and if that wasn't toxic masculinity, I don't know what is. And everything. And yes, I'm dating myself in terms of mentioning that old TV show, but we can even go back even further than that with the Clint Eastwood movies and the things along those lines. So definitely there is some of this toxic masculinity that seems to be the norm, even in, I would argue, some of our cartoon characters as well.
I think masculinity is needed. So I'll start there. I think, like with anything, too much of anything is bad. I found myself growing up trying to fit into boxes that I was never supposed to be in. My father is like the manliest man I know. He was like a player back in the day. He was like everything basketball. He was the man. And I thought that was masculinity. For the first year that I was doing poetry on the Philly scene, I lied about it. I was literally leaving the corner on a Friday night, like, yo, I'm going to see this girl. I'll be back later, y'all. I was going to the poetry spot. It didn't feel like a manly thing to tell my friends. And they let me go on with this ruse for a year. And so finally, Darnell was like, bro, you know, we caught you coming out the art gallery downtown, man. We know what you do. It's okay. But the fact that I felt like being corner boy was okay, and fighting was okay, and being with the hustlers was okay, and being the guy who, when we was going out, somebody would leave the gun in my car because I had license, registration, and insurance, and I was the college kid. That was okay. But being myself was not. And I think that's when toxic masculinity takes over. And I did a workshop series with my good friend Kavi, who is a trans brother. And we called it mending masculinity. And we took it from a cishet dude and a trans brother, and we like talked about our different experiences navigating masculinity. And we went everywhere from University of Alaska Fairbanks down to over to overseas, and having different conversations. And again, I remember like you brought up our Latino brothers trying to live up to that machismo, that it's not them. Like, I'm an artist. I don't want to live up to that. So if that's who you are, if you a big Jason Momoa, The Rock kind of dude, cool. But we need to find space for our softer brother. And I use soft in a very good way, not in a derogatory way. It's nothing wrong with being a softer brother. And when we can respect the Jason Momoas of the world the same way that we can respect the young, soft, short, skinny poet, and love on all of us and respect all of us, that's when we're starting to be a better society. We should not be trying to have tell those brothers that they're not any more manly. And this is coming from a 6'7", 300-pound professional full-time poet. Like, I'm navigating this. I've been navigating this, and we it becomes toxic when we contort ourselves to be more than what we are. It becomes toxic when we start putting those expectations and that overcompensation onto our sisters. That's when it becomes toxic. That's when it comes, and that's what we got to unpack, unravel, and undo.
No, I couldn't agree. We definitely got to unpack and unravel that and everything. Another thing that we've got to unravel, and a friend of mine actually next week is going to be doing for the, I think, fourth time this year, his Black Business Olympics, which is basically like a Black Business Expo where he celebrates our business community and all of that. But unfortunately, too often our business people are involved in what they call hookups, hustles, and those kind of jobs, and they're not really even going into the true business aspect. So they're not even really creating generational wealth. They're like basically just doing enough to get by with their jobs and not really creating like a true business empire. So I know that one of the people that had been on the show in the past was talking about that nature of business and how it can sometimes really be a detriment to our business community. So as an entrepreneur yourself, because I consider you an entrepreneur and an activist, I was wondering what message would you give to business people? Because I think that too often our business people don't understand the nature of the business and treat it almost as like a side hustle and things of that nature, and don't really give it the full depth that they need to give it in order to even create generational wealth for their kids. I don't have any kids, but I do have nephews, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to pass some stuff on to them
Definitely.
at some point when they get to those teen years, as they are now 12 and 13.
I think for me, the first thing I would say is, number one, define who you are, define success on your terms. Not to think of success as somebody else that you saw on Instagram or TikTok or wherever. Define what success means to you. Draw your lines and don't let anybody push you past them. Integrity, it doesn't always seem like it's rewarded, but sometimes you just got to wait for that reward to come and live with integrity. Define your own success. Don't let anybody else tell you that you're not successful. If again, your business may not be a multi-million-dollar business, but if it has an effect on the community, if you're able to feed your family, if you're able to not have to punch a clock for anybody else, and there's nothing wrong with punching the clock. I support my brothers and sisters who do 9 to 5s. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're able to sustain and live the way that you want to live and work with, and take care of your family on your terms, it's nothing wrong with that. Don't let nobody else define your success, and be consistent. It doesn't always pay off. Like, it doesn't always seem like it pays off, but people are watching. You never know who's watching this. The youngins are watching. Our young daughters and our young nieces and they're watching this. So stay consistent and be about your word. Be like integrity matters.
Oh yeah, integrity definitely matters, and I couldn't agree with you more. I would maybe just take a slight aside to one of the things that you said, but not totally disagree. But that is that I sometimes feel that society in general pushes too many of us to go to the 9 to 5 job. So I do wish that more of us were encouraged to do more businesses and to get into the business fields, because society in general tries to, from the time we go to grade school, tell us to go to work for the corporate America and
definitely
all of that. And so
that's so if that's what you for me, I just want people to do what they want to do. Right. Like, I have a good friend, and she checked me. I'm all about working for yourself, doing for you. She loves her job,
right? Because
she was like, she would have anxiety not knowing how much is going to come in next month. She needs to know what her paycheck going to say, what the benefits hitting for it. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I'm wrong. I'm going to evolve my thinking on that. Not everybody is built for being able to withstand the hustle, withstand COVID was brutal for a lot of us. But some folks aren't able to do that. So if that's what, I don't want anybody to be pushed anywhere they don't want to be. But if for my brothers and sisters who like, hey, listen, I want to know what's going to be on this check next week, I support you too.
No, and I definitely agree with you on that. And I can understand where having that check that you know what it is, whatever that amount is, whether it's somebody working, as Martin Luther King would say, as a janitor, or somebody working as an executive. I will support people as long as
Respect.
they're, like you said, doing what they want to do and
Yeah.
living in their truth, because the person that is doing those other jobs, whether it's an entrepreneur or whether it's a doctor, I also sometimes think that we don't honor the people that are doing the day-to-day work jobs as well.
Yep.
'Cause I've had this conversation with some friends, including some friends on this network, where I've had some relatives that have been involved in the plumbing field, and I've known some people in the auto mechanic field and a
Yep.
number of other quote unquote blue collar kind of jobs, including some folks that were disregarded in their social life because they were seen as not having the quote unquote right type of job and everything.
Yeah.
But as I pointed out to some friends of mine, including some ladies, some of those plumbers and doctors, I mean, some of those plumbers and auto mechanics, and even some of those
They
bricklayers,
make money.
might be making more than that doctor, that lawyer that you're chasing.
They
and
make
everything.
money. And everybody, even throughout the pandemic, my friend is a plumber. He worked the entire, because people, them toilets is still getting broken, that hot water heater still busting, is always work. So I support my blue collar brothers and sisters, my white collar brothers and sisters, and all the entrepreneurs out there. As long as you're doing what you want to do, what helps, what makes you happy when you're going to bed, what motivates you when you wake up in the morning, I salute you.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. One of the things that we talked about on this show, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, and it's been on both the one that you were part of now, the online dinner party, but also some of the other shows, some that I host and some that I'm just part of in terms of being a fellow panelist or just involved in the process, is this whole notion of us being our own worst enemies. And as an entrepreneur and as an artist, I was wondering your thoughts about that, because sometimes, whether it's, the significant other whispering in your ear, or whether it's our own inner critic whispering in our ear, we can be our own worst enemies, and we can also listen to folks that may not have our best interests in heart. So what is the ways that you deal with that, Vision Poet, in terms of both your inner critic and maybe those outside forces that might be trying to discourage you from either your animation, your script writing, or back when you were more active in the slam poetry scene? I'm sure there were people that were like, you don't need to be doing that. You're not going to make it this way or that way. And they might have even been folks that were even in your circle. Because I know that I've got a friend of mine, I mentioned him earlier, that's in the music circle. And sometimes he does not get the kind of support that he would like from his fellow musicians here in this area. So how do you address those folks that can be your worst critics?
I think I've always been my own worst critic. So I'll start there. What's helping is, number one, I say to myself, be where your feet are. And that's been helping with the anxiety of because we all have our ambitions and where we want to go. Like, everybody who follows, my series Trash the Piece Theater, like, they know I've been trying to pitch it and trying to sell it, to be able to, get it on a bigger platform. And it's been some really cool things happening, but I'm not where I want to be yet. So I have these moments where I'm like, yo, is this even worth it? Nobody, I keep getting these soft no's, and it's been really weird. Some people have tried to steal it and do their own versions of it, and it kind of flops. So I have these moments of self-doubt, and then I think back all right, boom. If in November 2020 or November 2019, I was able to go back and tell myself, yo, Viz, in 2 years' time, you're going to have a very successful animated show. You're going to win the Audience Award at the American Black Film Festival's Comedy Festival. You're going to screen at the Black Star Film Festival. You're going to pitch for people that you've never even thought you'd meet in life. Will you take that deal? All day, every day. So I can't get so caught up with the future that I'm not enjoying the moment, the moment in the present, and being grateful for what I have. So being where my feet are and remembering what I've gone, how far I've come, that's been helping. With regards to outside folks, I experienced that a lot over the last few years, and what I'm proud of myself is I've always hoarded my friends, was afraid to let people go. And over the last few years, I'm like, look, I'm gonna have to love you from over there. You stay there, ain't no beef, but the circle that I have right now are very supportive, and they pick me up when I'm down. They kick me in the butt when I'm in my feels about not being where I'm like, boy, shut up. You just won a down film festival. Shut up. I need that. So the ones who are doubting, it's cool, ain't no beef. I just can't run with you no more. And maybe at some point when you catch up, we can be cool again. But it ain't no beef. I don't have no ill will, no malice towards you. It's cool. You don't believe in me. It's okay. I have way too many people that do to focus on the ones that don't. And I see that a lot. I remember one of my kids, Kai Davis, a really dope poet out of Philly, and she had a video that went viral on World Star, millions of views. And she was reading the comments, and it was 100 people telling her she was great. And then one person saying like something hateful. And she focused on that one person. I'm like, thousands of people are showering you with praise and you're focusing on that one. That's not logical. So remembering back that too, like there's gonna be people who don't like you, and that's okay. There's gonna be like, this is whack. Thank you for watching. It's cool. It's not for you. I don't like to consume everybody's art. They're very popular musicians, and I'm like, it's not for me. It's very popular producers and directors who make art that people adore, and it's like, wasn't for me. I'm not hating, it's just not for me. And I gotta accept that same criticism, and I have to have that same attitude when it's other people. So it's just trying to stay grounded and humbling myself, but also focusing on the people who are close to me, who are like, yo, you got this, we behind you. If I focus on them and not the others, I'm good.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Earlier we were talking about the business aspect of show business and things along those lines. I'm sometimes fascinated, and actually had a guest on earlier today, Jay Jones, who is a PR person out of, I want to say Pennsylvania, but looking to move to LA and everything. And he actually was involved with Dr. Phil in the early days of Dr. Phil. But we were talking about show business and a lot about how a lot of times people are very good at the show aspect. They can give you a show all day long, but don't necessarily have business plans or even have an idea of what a pitch deck is or some of the other aspects that you might need for show business. So as one that is involved in this field that we like to call show business, has that surprised you? And is it something that you even had to learn yourself, the business aspect of this field? Because I know a lot of times we can definitely be caught in our talent, but that business aspect is also vital. And I've seen some, I would argue, old veterans that also don't have the business side together as well. And I think that can be a shame, because sometimes they can be taken advantage of. Because I know some folks that are in the blues world, and people might be quote unquote helping them in business, but then when you look at the business deal, who's getting the better end of the deal? It might be the people that are quote unquote helping them and in some ways pimping them.
It's real, and I can attest. Like I'm learning on the fly. I've actually, like, I came into this backwards. I don't have a degree in theater or production or anything. My degree is in sociology. I majored in sociology, minored in history. I was a teacher. I was a poet. And I just happened to try. I stumbled onto something messing around on Instagram that kind of built up some steam. So I was blessed that I try my best to be good to people, and people looked out for me. You know, I was really good to it. Like there's a poet out of LA named Donnie Jackson who was in Philly for a while, and I just knew him as a poet who would come to my event, and I would show him love. We'd have a good time and chop it up, and we kept in touch. He's a producer in Hollywood. And, you know, and I didn't know it at the time. It wouldn't matter to me because I'm just a poet. But as he's been mentoring me, like, hey, all right, look, this is a pitch deck as you're moving forward. He's been keeping me in the right lane. Then I've run into some other folks like, you know, Mary Carmel, who is the director of the Black Star Film Festival, who has also been keeping me in the right lane. So now that's why I said your integrity is important, because people will look out for you. If number one, if you look out for yourself, they see that you're willing to do the work, but then also they know you're a good person. You haven't done anybody dirty over the years. You haven't grinded anybody's gears. You've just been a good dude or good woman. They'll look out for you. And all of that led to my manager, and all of that led to my first production team kind of signing on board. And I'm flying. I'm building the plane as I'm flying it, but I'm learning the business. And I've had my entertainment lawyer, my trademark lawyer, we're all fans of the show. Like, hey, listen, this is going to be big. You need to trademark this stuff now. This is going to be big. I'm going to introduce you to an entertainment lawyer because she needs to school you. So like all of that stuff. And then people I went to school with are lawyers. And so just number one, working your network. But number two, like not being afraid to say, I don't know. I'll be in these pitch meetings, bro, and they be talking terms I never heard. I'm just taking notes. I'm going to ask my manager later. And not trying to pretend like I know everything. I'm an artist, But I also watched the Michaela Coles of the world. I also watched the Issa Raes of the world, and seeing how they stood up for themselves, stood tall in their art, didn't take no shorts, didn't take the first deal. And a few weeks back, somebody offered me, well, number one, like last year, this time, somebody offered me a sucker management deal that I was fortunate enough to be able to take to my ex-girlfriend from college and say, no, don't sign this. She's a lawyer. Don't you dare sign this. So number one, knowing to be smart enough to just not take a deal because somebody's big name is attached to it. Let somebody look at this. And then two, a few weeks back, somebody tried to attach me to a network that I didn't necessarily want to be a part of. And they were like, well, listen, you either going to do it or we're not going to be on board. Bye.
Yeah.
Michaela, I seen what happened with Michaela Cole when Netflix tried to sell her short. I seen what happened with Issa when folks were trying to take over her stuff and just sell her short. I'm like, I'm able to navigate and walk in their footsteps, walk in their, their snow prints. I'm good. So number one, being honest with yourself and saying I don't know some things, and then researching it, and number two, researching the folks who've come before you, because you're not creating the wheel here. So I'm learning on the fly. I don't know Hollywood, but I'm fortunate enough to know some really powerful Emmy Award-winning folks who I met way earlier in life that are looking out for me now, just by being good to them back in the day when I didn't know who they were. Be good to people, man.
Yeah, you got to be good, and that's actually one of the things. That's one of the things that Jay was talking about was definitely maintaining those relationships, because those relationships is things that can be important to you. One of the things that Jay was talking about, and like I said, he's a leading PR person, and all of that was not burning bridges. And I mean, there might be cases where you have to burn bridges for whatever personal reasons, but as a general rule, he was saying don't burn those bridges because you might need to walk across that bridge later on. And I would agree with him that is a real fact, and we got to be careful because, like I said, he's had the pleasure of working with everybody from Sally Jesse Raphael to Geraldo to, like I said, Dr. Phil.
Phil.
Definitely, that was some.
And I'm learning that, like, even with I don't want to say nobody's names, so I think that's like against protocol. But like some of these big production companies, like, hey, this isn't for me. This is a little bit too edgy for me. But come back. I like you. Come back. This is a really good pitch. I enjoy talking to you. Let me know what else you got. So I could have been in my feels like, oh, they told me no. Nah, it's cool. It's not for you. I can't make it be for you. Maybe the next project I'll work on, we can work together. Ain't no beef. It's all up. I look at it like nobody owes me anything. Like nobody owes me. This has been some really big celebrities out of Philly who I really wanted to work with, who told me no. It's like, hey, look, this is really cool. I'll watch it, but it ain't for me. All right, maybe my next project will be. I'm looking long term. I'm looking bigger than this. It's okay. Like, you don't have to burn a bridge. Sometimes that might happen. Like you said, it might happen. It might have to happen, but it doesn't have to be beef. It doesn't have to be like a contentious thing. It's business. It's cool. Yeah. It's not for you. It's not for your brand. I'll see you later. And on top of that, I'm gonna prove you wrong with this one. You're gonna wish that you signed on.
No, but I hear you. You're gonna wish that they had signed on at the early times when they actually had the opportunity to, and after you got the and maybe you're gonna have a different price tag than you would have had if they had joined on early, and then they'll be regretting not having signed on in that regard. How important do you think it is to have a team of folks that are part of your inner circle and the things along those lines? I am not going to say that I am the biggest LeBron James fan and everything. There are other basketball players that I have liked in the past, but I do love his business acumen, and I love the way that he basically took his boys from the hood to school and helped them go to school, and they are part of his inner management team, from what I understand. Like I said, I don't know the man personally, but from what I've read, it seems like he actually trained them by, he was able to use the money that he made in the NBA to afford to pay them to be part of his core team that he has, and things along those lines. I'm sure he's got people that are outside of that core, but I'm imagining that it's good to have folks that knew you when you were a youngster. And I was just wondering whether you have any of that in your own team. You mentioned an X and everything, but I was wondering, has it been all folks that have come onto the project from outside, or do you sometimes have those people that are part of your inner team that have known you for life, whether that was family members or whether that was folks like LeBron that I understand grew up with him?
Well, first of all, shout out to Spring Hill Entertainment, LeBron's people. They were really, really cool to me. Like, they're good people over there. I never talked to LeBron, but the team that he got, they're solid. I was able to talk to their team. They're really, really dope people. for me, like again, I've always been able to tap into my network. Nobody's really doing in my circle what I'm doing. I've always been like the only artist in my circle, of my friends that I grew up with.
Right.
But I tap into other artists, that were on the scene with, either musicians or folks who have degrees in film, who have degrees in theater or animation, and I tap in with them to try to get their opinions. Like, hey, listen, what do you see here that I'm not seeing? Because I stumbled onto this. I'm learning on the fly. I'm putting out episodes, and I don't even really know what I'm doing right. I'm pedal to the metal. I had no idea what I was doing. Like my first 5 episodes, I had no idea what I'm doing. And I tap into them and get their opinion and trust that, number one, I don't want no yes men around me. If I'm messing up, tell me I'm messing up. Tell me how this can be better. Tell me what I can do differently. Show me what I can do. Check me. Please check me, because I'm not going to grow any other way. So that's been the big thing with my friends. They have carte blanche to check me. They have carte blanche to look at my art and say, nah, this ain't it. But if you try something differently, that might be it. One of my good friends that I grew up with, who's in quite a few of my episodes, he's my damn stylist. He not even like my personal. He became like a humongous stylist in Philly. I'm like, hey, like I'm going to use you for this. Other people that are doing things like, oh, you do that, I'm going to use you for that. Like, we can just all keep this in the family. Like, we can all support each other. We can all help each other grow. So my story isn't quite like LeBron and Maverick and all them, but it is like, hey, I'm going to use my network. If I have folks in my circle who are lawyers or plumbers or whatever, I'm going to, like, we can all keep this together. We can all get money together. We can all support each other in different ways.
No, I hear you, and I've actually become part of a network that is actually out of Clubhouse. And if somebody told me like last year or something like that I would be part of it, and I mentioned Stacey earlier, she's now part of it as well. But if somebody told me that I would be a member of a funky eye puppet group giving voices, I would have told them they were crazy. Because, like I said, I've done radio for years and definitely come from a radio background. But I definitely never would have thought of myself as a voice actor, particularly of a puppet comic troupe and all of that. But I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And like you said, there are people in there that are celebrating their differences, because like I said, there are people in there that are gunshot victims. There are people there that are dealing with different health issues, be that MS or be that AIDS or be that a number of other things, but they are actually bringing that truth into the stories that IPC has created. And he is doing the whole animation thing with the puppet voices and things along those lines. But it's just truly amazing, and it's all about inclusivity and trying to create a better world using his gifts. And he's actually a George Lucas disciple. So I know him. Actually, ironically, he also comes from the poet world, because he is the undefeated haiku champion of the world. I don't think anybody beat him as of it yet, and he's been in
crazy town. Like it's hard. Like 575 is hard, man. It's not an easy thing. Like, you got to be that brevity is no joke. And I think it's a testament to you that you were open to like try something new and to be a part of a network. And because again, Clubhouse, when I joined Clubhouse, I had the reputation for just being like this messy network of like celebrities talking trash on each other. And meanwhile, like, you asking a question in a room full of other producers, I met one of my mentors who just produced a film this year is going to be Oscar nominated. And just because I had the balls to ask the question that I asked, we became friends. Right. And I shoot everything past her now. Any opportunity, I'm like, hey, this is I don't do that. Oh yeah, that's be open to that. So again, just being open and being honest, being vulnerable, to put yourself out there on an app. It doesn't have to, you can use Clubhouse to be messy, just like you can use Instagram, or you can use it to be beneficial, like you're doing, like I've been doing, like Stacey does, to help build. And if you want to be messy a little bit, you can balance it out too. It's cool. But use all the tools. Social media can be just another tool in the toolbox to help you build what you're trying to build.
No, I agree. It's definitely another tool, and it's a great tool and everything.
Yeah.
What do you say when folks, because when I'm reading your bio and I knew about your being a poet and an educator, but there's another term that even when sometimes people make the introductions of you, as I was looking at some of the introductions of your past appearances, they use that. I even use it sometimes in my own description, but I sometimes feel that it is a misused term. So I was wondering your thoughts about being an activist and whether you are even comfortable being called an activist, because I sometimes think that it is a term that can have a great responsibility to it if you understand its history and everything, but it can also be a misused term, because I don't know that everybody that calls themselves an activist is truly an activist. But I was just wondering your thoughts about being even labeled an activist, because like I said, when I read some of the descriptions, they would oftentimes mention you as a poet, an educator, and an activist. So I was wondering how comfortable you in that terminology.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't use myself. I don't describe myself as an activist. I'm an artist. I'm an educator. That's pretty much it. Like, and that's it. Like, I'm an artist and I'm an educator, because that's very, very broad. I don't. If anything, I've helped organize. I've done quote unquote activist work, but I think that's not like a term that I'm comfortable using anymore. I'm gonna show up. If you need me to get on the bullhorn, I'm gonna do that. If you need me to be the shield between you and whoever, I'm gonna do that. If you need me to be way in the back and shut the hell up, I'm gonna do that. So I'm not. I don't. It's an interesting thing. Activism to me, it's not. Activism is the work. Being an activist is just, that's like, it's like calling yourself an ally.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like the work. Allyship is work. It's not a destination. It's a constant journey. And that's how I look at activism. It's just it's a never ending journey, because something is always going to need work. So calling yourself that, it's just like, it's like you've reached the destination, and I don't feel comfortable saying that anymore.
No,
I think at one point I might have used it in my bio, but I definitely don't. I don't feel comfortable with that anymore.
No, I hear you. And like I said, I can understand what you're saying about it being a journey. Like I said, I was involved with Occupy. I was involved with a number of other things. I was even involved to some degree with Moral Mondays, and which was here in North Carolina and everything. And definitely some activities even around the dream community and the things of that nature. And sometimes you also have roles that are fun as part of that, but I have led the chants in places, like Whose Streets, My Streets, and things of that nature.
Same.
Then definitely it can definitely be something that is a chance to use your voice and whatever that voice is and everything. And I've also shared some of the history, because I'm very familiar with the history of Black Wall Street and to some degree Durham and its activism history. So I don't mind sharing that if I'm making a presentation here in the Durham area, or even outside of Durham, like Raleigh or some of the other cities that I've been to. So definitely I agree with you in that regards. And sometimes you also have to be in some uncomfortable positions as well, because I've mentioned to some friends of mine here on this network, because we were talking about Antifa and some of the activities that can go on with disruptive forces. And sometimes you have to be what I call a bird dog. And sometimes that can be part of activism as well, because you do know who the players are. And sometimes you might just have to give them a simple tap on the shoulder, as if to say, we're not going to have that happen today and everything, if you feel that they're going to be disruptive. And I'm thinking that with a 6'9" frame, you've probably had to do that a couple of times, and they might have been like, yep, I don't think I'm going to mess with doing anything with this today, because the 6'9" man just tapped me on the shoulder, and I'm not really trying to get into a confrontation with him.
Yeah, I've seen it all from agent provocateurs trying to mess it up, and I've seen it all doing the work over the years. But also, I think the problem with the word, how the word is now perceived, not necessarily the word, is that it's become very performative.
Right.
And it's like, if only if you're speaking, or only if you're on the stage or leading the charge, then you're the activist. It's like, nah, wait a minute. Like, okay, Dr. King was the person who we knew, but Bayard Rustin was the one who gave him all the game, was the one who taught him how to organize. And the only reason he couldn't be out front was because he was gay. Exactly. So like, the sisters who ran off all the papers for the Montgomery boycott, they're no less activist than Rosa Parks.
Exactly.
They ran off tens of thousands of flyers to organize this. They're no less activists. So I think we're at a point now, specifically with social media, where it's become very performative, and the person, everybody wants to be like this at the rally, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm here. It's like, cool, I'm glad you're here. But that doesn't necessarily make you an activist. It doesn't make you not an activist. So for me, it's everything is about doing the work. And whether you on the front line or you doing the work somewhere else, whatever you're comfortable doing, you don't have to be marching if that's not who you are. But if you can organize the folks get together, if you can create the Facebook group that just it's all going into the same pie. We all trying to accomplish the same thing.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. As you were saying that, I was actually just thinking about my brother who just celebrated his let's see, 69, so his 52nd birthday earlier last month and everything. But one of the stories that people talk about that is that when he was born in 1969, my mom was actually having him, and that was actually on the same day that the Malcolm X school was having its groundbreaking. So from the story that I've heard is that mom got rushed to Raleigh because we were living in Raleigh at the time. Well, I think me and my dad stayed because he was one of the organizers of the Malcolm X school. So we actually, I think, went later to Raleigh to actually, meet my brother as he had then come into the world and everything. But definitely, I think she was rushed off because she was having the baby at that time that they were actually getting ready to have this whole event in terms of launching this organization that only lasted for about 2 or 3 years. But even in that brief time, it did make a difference in our community and all of that. Before you get out of here, I got a couple of quick things and everything. But one of the things that I know you're very much adamant about, and it's something that's come up in society a lot, is this idea of identity politics and the racial identity. So I was just wondering your thoughts about this and how important is it? Because I know that even in my own family, I primarily identify as African American, but I have family members that strictly identify as a Native American, some that are very active in the powwow culture. And if you actually told them that they had black blood, they might actually fight you or argue about it and things of that nature. And of course, in my family, we acknowledge all of our parts of our mud background. So we do acknowledge the Native American part, even though we think that that's a lesser part, and even lesser the European part. But we do acknowledge all of that. But I was just wondering, because a lot of times you do find people that, for whatever reasons, may identify with one group more than another. Because sometimes it might even be because they can get some benefits out of it. Because we do know some people that blame the Native American side because they're figuring they're going to get some more money out of it.
Or even some self-hating. I mean, that was a big thing back in the day. Like, I'm not black, I'm Native American. It's like, are you? I mean, if you are, cool. But like, a lot of it was like, I don't want to be black. I think identity is a big thing. I think in a lot of ways it's evolving. I grew up in a time just like you, where the paper bag test and the one drop rule. You know what I mean? And I think we're finally starting to evolve past that, but that's the world in which I grew up in. I think if you're gonna rock with that, you got to stand on that 10 toes. Like I always say, I'm biracial. I'm a black man who has a white father, but my mom is black. I grew up in North Philly, and I identify as black. That doesn't take away from anything that my father or his family, which I don't know a lot of them, it doesn't take away from anything like that. But at the end of the day, I'm a black man. I'm a black man in America. It's how I'm perceived. I might be able to pass for Samoan on some days. I'm a big dude, but I'm a black man in America. And at the end of the day, when the cops are pulling up, they're not differentiating. They're not saying, you know what, we're gonna beat him a little bit less because he might have a white pants. Like that's not how that happens. Now, I recognize that colorism is real and that there is privilege with being lighter, that I have privilege that my darker brothers don't have. But at the end of the day, I stand on that 10 toes and I'm a black man in this society. It's that simple for me.
No, I agree with you. And it's interesting you brought up colorism because sometimes our brothers in other parts of the world don't even acknowledge their own issues with colorism. I've had this conversation with some of my Indian brothers and some of the brothers from like Australia and other places. And I'm going like, y'all got some serious issues around colorism and class that y'all may not want to acknowledge. But definitely that can be
the Middle East as well. Issue. Yeah, the Middle East, but specifically India, where like colorism is huge in India. And we talk about it a lot within the black community and even with the Latino communities. It's big in Brazil, but it's humongous it's humongous in India, and it is very prevalent in the Middle East as well. Like there is always privilege when you are closer to white. The closer you are to white, you typically have more privilege. And once we acknowledge that, like number one, it doesn't mean that you had an easy life. It just means you have less obstacles in some regards than the person over there who is darker than you. So what we need to do in that regard is use the privilege that we have to be able to benefit others, to be able to, even I'm a big man, I have big man privilege. I remember when I was in Palestine, like popping off against the IDF. Now I had it in the right place, but I'm like, you can't come for me because number one, I'm an American, and that was another privilege that we don't want to talk about. It's a privilege to have that blue passport in some places in the world. But like once you have that privilege, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to just let it benefit yourself, or are you going to use that to the benefit of other people, to the people who don't have it? That's the commitment that you have to have, and a lot of us don't do that. And I've been guilty of that at times as well.
Yeah, I hear you, and I've been guilty as well. One of the other things that I find fascinating is how sometimes there is a deflection that goes on as well. And I'm not saying that class is not a important issue; it can even be an issue as to why people go into the criminal element and things of that nature. But I don't know about you, but I do sometimes get frustrated when people try to deflect the race issue into a class issue and not understanding maybe the relationship between the two, but they try to make it an either or kind of diatribe and things of that nature. And I think that the two are interconnected, but I have heard people that'll be like, but no, it's not a race issue. It's really a class issue. And I'm going like, but the two are somewhat related.
In what country? In the United States, like everything is the country was built on a racial issue.
Right.
It's been developed under a racial issue. And yes, race and class, as a sociologist, race and class go hand in hand. And racism has often been used as a function to promote classism. There's no doubt about that. Having poor whites mad at poor blacks, that's just so rich whites can be picking their pockets while they're trying to fight us. We understand that, but that doesn't mean that the racism doesn't exist. We understand that classism is a big thing. We understand that the rich gets richer and the poor gets poor, and it's happened even during the pandemic. We understand that, but that doesn't mean that racism doesn't exist. That's still, yes, cops are going to shoot us at a higher rate. That's racism. You know what I mean? It is what it is. And to say that is a deflection, like you said, but it's also like that doesn't affect me. Like you still benefit from it though. So use that and help the others that is offending, that is weighing down on. It's such a BS argument. They go hand, and you can't have, not in America, you can't have one without the other. It doesn't exist.
No, and I agree with you. It doesn't exist.
It's so absurd.
It is absurd. And I've had conversations with people where they try to say that they don't understand how racism is even impacting our modern society. Because I've had, even on this network, some folks that have asked me to give examples, and I've mentioned everything from redlining to banks to the highway systems. And sometimes they don't want to acknowledge that the highway systems are racist. And sometimes they don't even want to acknowledge that some of the places that can be toxic, meaning like where the toxic things, whether it's a nuclear plant or
environmental racism.
Right.
But it's documented. These are facts. This is nothing that this is. Like, if you don't want to see these, that means you just don't want to see them. Like, we understand that environmental racism works. We understand that redlining, the effects that it has. To this day, we understand that the prison industrial system is still a thing. So, like, yes, people are making money off that, but if they're plucking poor black people out of Philly and sending them to the western part of the state in some rural white area, they got jobs because I'm sitting in this cell. I'm sure that's a North Carolina thing too. Somebody out of Raleigh or Durham or Charlotte is going out to Asheville, some suburban community out in Asheville, to sit down so that somebody can have a job.
Right.
Like, that's a thing. It's classism, but it's to this day, it's just because we had Obama, just because we have some folks on the internet who are rich, it doesn't mean that it's not a systemic thing. Like, it's systemic. It's systematic and systemic. And once you learn the differences between those two terms, you understand how deeply rooted this is.
Yeah, it's very deeply rooted, and folks don't understand that. I'm hoping that before we get out of here, that we can hear at least a work, if you can do anything off the top of your dome. And I know that that's asking a lot of a poet, but I'm sure that folks would love to hear at least one or two of your works. And then I have a going off the air question that I ask everybody, which is how folks can reach you. And also, as this is a global platform, your message of positivity and hope. But first, before we get to that, hopefully we can get some of your work.
I do one, and this one really is dear to me because I think a lot of men don't talk about depression, and depression hit me really hard in 2017, 2018, 2019, and I tried to run from it. As somebody who talks about issues with regard to masculinity and tell people to seek help, I was a complete hypocrite when I was going through it myself. But one day I felt good, and during that day, I was in the light for one day. I'm like, I may never see this light again. I'm going to write. And so throughout the day, I literally wrote this poem all day long, and you'll understand it when you hear it. The bed beckons, and recently rising has been a miracle of motion. But today I feel blessed. Today I will not drown in a garden of linens, then struggle to resurrect myself. Today I feel blessed, and I find myself on an L platform at 5:55 a.m. doing a horrible samba to Joao Gilberto. The man 10 feet away from me beams. I'm not sure if he's laughing at my stubborn hips or smiling at this audacious freedom, but today I dance. I dance onto the train, deep in my Sergio Mendes bag. Today, the weight of chaos defies gravity. I am black boy buoyant, black man defiant. I am underground yet still reflecting a sun that is not yet risen. A girl takes out her phone and tries to sneak a video of me. And normally I'd be upset, but today, feel free to turn this black joy viral. I ascend up flights of stairs like a resurrection is imminent, and it is, and it's mine. Downtown Philly is still dark, but I'm lit, and I'm two-stepping to 90s R&B, Chico DeBarge and Joe, and I'm singing off key like they wrote it for my imperfect pitch. I'm at the gym, and hypermasculinity is tapping me on the shoulder, telling me to calm down, telling me to chill, that men don't dance, that men don't feel free, but patriarchy won't patronize me today, won't convince me that man and stoic are synonymous. I am unshaken, I am unshackled, and Carl Thomas just gave me permission to move. I'm back outside, but I'm still plugged in. I'm still feeling regal, still feeling relucent. I wink at the sun and watch it begin to covet my radiance. And the air tastes like spring, like opportunities anew. The breeze feels like fresh skin, a shameless shedding. I'm back at my apartment, and my puppy tilts his head. Nugget's been witnessing me mope for months up and down these halls like I've been haunting our home. Today he doesn't bat those beautiful brown obelisks at me. He's smiling because I'm smiling, and I'm blasting Meek Mill through the speaker, and we mean mug like only North Philly and a pit bull can. I'm reluctant to bathe. Don't want to wash off this feeling like there's a fine line between backsliding and baptism. I shower rebelliously. Nugget sits in the bathroom like he doesn't want to leave while I'm levitating. I'm back in my bedroom reading toxic texts from passive-aggressive new opportunity. I say, okay. My phone rings, and an old vow is on the other end with an orchard of apologies. I say, okay. 2 syllables have never been this palatable before. I'm okay. The bed will beckon again, and I'll be okay. I have let go. I have let God. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? But today I'm at the corner of faith and flying, and this is what it feels like to survive winter.
Wow, that was deep and everything. I love the way that you incorporated, and this may sound like a interesting aside, but I like the way you incorporated the love of the pet in there as well, because I'm a fan of Mother Nature and a fan of our relationship to our pets as well.
Absolutely.
My brother's had a couple of dogs. As a matter of fact, his lady love just lost one of her major dogs, so they can oftentimes be part of our mental health and our mental well-being. It's been a minute since I've had a dog, or a minute since I've had a cat, because I'm actually one of those people that likes all of the animal kingdom, dogs and cats, and have even had some weird pets like raccoons and goats and things of that nature. But definitely, and I think a pair of geckos as well that were actually a gift of mine from somebody that was moving to New York. So they were named unusual names like Linguini, Fettuccine, and Alfredo. That's right. They were all named after Italian dishes. So I've missed all of those animals since it's been a minute since I've had an animal or a pet. Looking at my apartment going like, I need an animal or a pet in here as I was hearing that poem, because that can definitely help with our mental well-being. And speaking of mental well-being, I'm going to have to put you in touch with my good friend, Ronnie. And I mentioned him earlier. He's the one that did This Christmas, and he is there in Los Angeles. But he is a movie producer, and his next film, I think, is going to be a documentary, because he did Puff Puff Pass, which was kind of like a Cheech and Chong type film. And, of course, he did This Christmas, and he's done a few others. But the next one, I think, is going to be dealing around mental health, which we don't talk enough about in our community. So he's actually going to be making a documentary around that, and I think it'll be coming out next year. So he's definitely somebody that I need to put you two in touch, because y'all have a similar energy and a similar style and all of that. So I think it would be a great match that I would like to facilitate happening. So I'm going to try to see what I can do to make that happen on my end.
That's what's up.
I'm all about that. as I said earlier, because I am getting ready to wind down, got to actually produce a friend of mine's show, and it comes on at 8 o'clock, and then call it a day and everything. But all the guests, we like to know how they can reach you if they're interested in reaching you, and any words of positivity or encouragement that you want to share. And also, if you want to let folks know really briefly, we kind of alluded to it, about the animation piece that you are working on.
Yeah, I do it. I do an animation, an animated show. Episodes come out every Sunday at 6. It's on my Instagram page and my YouTube page, and both of them are Vision Poet. One word, VISIONPOET. And it's Toxic Tales from a Former F Boy. It's a if you were a fan of the 90s and the 2000s and you just want a nostalgic laugh, please, watch, enjoy, have fun. Feel free to judge me. I do it all the time. Again, all my socials are Vision Poet. It's very, very streamlined. VISIONPOET. And positive word, I would say, keep doing what drives you, what makes you happy. My father says it all the time. He said, do what makes you happy until it no longer makes you happy, then find the next thing. And I'll give you another thing that Donnie Jackson tells me, an amazing producer. When I was thinking about animating the show, when I was just writing out this, I think I'm on to something here, Donnie. And I was like, I came with this whole spiel, this pitch. I think I could teach myself how to animate. I'm gonna do this. I could do this. And he was like, okay, do it. If it don't work, don't do it again.
Wow.
And it was really that simple. And that's how my life has been going. So if whatever you're thinking about, if you're afraid, just do it. If it don't work, don't do it again. It's really simple. Live your life that way. It's been working really well for me.
I appreciate it. Appreciate you being a guest. Hope that you'll make a return trip. As far as I'm concerned, once I bring people on as guests, they're part of the family. And I always love having them come back on whenever they're available. So if you want to share more about the animation tale, more about whatever is going on in your life, do know that you have another welcome home here as well. So definitely, I love offering that. And anytime that you want to come back, all you got to do is reach out to me on LinkedIn or Facebook or any of the other social medias, Instagram included, and tell me, hey, I want to pop back on and have one of those conversations. Sometimes it's one-on-one, as it's been today. Sometimes it's a group of folks, because like I said, I wasn't even sure whether the PR person would be on at the same time as you or not. So sometimes it can be as many as 4 or 5, 6 or 7, depending on how many StreamYard allows you to have on at that particular time.
Love it.
And all of that. So it can be one-on-one or sometimes one-on like a group conversation as well. But anytime that you're available, just let me know, and I'll definitely bring you in and all of that. And
absolutely.
The note of going out, I'm going to bring in my friend Lotus, and we're going to be downloading some of her shows because she's given me that ability to do that. So she's very active in Facebook and a number of other places. So we're going to be bringing some of her past YouTube shows to hear on international broadcast media. So I'm going to let you hear about her services because she's active in Clubhouse as well, and even teaches people about how to use Clubhouse and some of the other social media. So I'm going to bring her up as well as maybe Prosperity Financial Services and get on out of here. But this has been a fun conversation with both you, Vision Poet, and with Jay as well. So we'll be back on actually later on this evening. I've got to do my friend's show, and Jay, you'll get a kick out of this, talking about dealing out of your norm. I've got some friends that do a lip sync competition on LinkedIn. I am horrible at lip syncing. I do not acknowledge to see like this is great lip syncing skills and everything. But even though I'm North Carolina bound, I do know, how to play the dozens. So I'm a good trash talker. So we have fun trash talking at each other and all of that. So that's actually part of the fun, is who I'm claiming made us the victors, because I've claimed everybody from the president to the entire Los Angeles Dodgers team as given us the victory and all of that. So sometimes, as you know, as a poet, sometimes you're so busy telling the lie and telling the joke that it's hard to even get it out straight. So that is also the joke, because sometimes I'm talking so much junk that they know that I'm lying and they know that I'm doing a lot of trash talking because I'm too busy laughing. But sometimes I try to still have fun with it and all of that. So I'm going to bring up Lotus's thing as well as the Prosperity Financial Services and get ready to talk some lip sync trash in about an hour and a half.
It's time for you to to start bossing in social media. For all your social media needs, you've come to the right place at the right time to get your website designed, landing page, social media platforms, and get the training you need to get in front of the people that's ready to buy your products and services. Let me train you with StreamYard, Zoom, Clubhouse, and much more. And let me help you get your virtual professionals, not assistants, because assistants can only assist you, but the virtual professional can give you that professional flavor that you need to expand your reach and increase your revenue. Jump on in and get in where you fit in and start bossing today.
Are you looking for money-saving strategies for your business and personal finances? Are you tired of working hard every day with little or nothing to show for it? Contact Prosperity Financial Services, LLC right now for your free financial consultation. Call now to reserve yours today, 804-349-8600, 804-349-8600.